Chapter 962. Fatal Trap. Chapter 962. Fatal Trap. The cultivators were moved. Was he threatening a void reversion? After killing Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Panglan consecutively, Su Zimo's combat strength had already surpassed all the nascent soul paragons present. But now the fact that Su Zimo said something like that to a void reversion of the Buddhist sects shocked everyone. Isn't Su Zimo way too arrogant? He's actually threatening a void reversion. He must be getting cocky after killing 2 paragons in succession. He's just overestimating himself at this point. Normally, given Su Zimo's combat strength, he would definitely be able to challenge void reversions across major realms. However, this is the successor of Formless Monastery of the Buddhist monasteries and not an ordinary void reversion. He has just gone through 2 major battles and has expended a lot of stamina and mental strength. If he still dares to provoke a void reversion at this moment, he's asking to be humiliated. Boom! The ground shook. Just as the crowd was in doubt, Su Zimo had already attacked. He was not threatening the void reversion. He chose to attack the latter directly. Su Zimo's feet landed on the ground and he charged forward. There was a sonic boom behind him and he arrived before Monk Xianming in the blink of an eye. Let go! Su Zimo flipped his palm and smashed down on the head of Monk Xianming with a terrifying might, covering the skies. Audacious! Back down! Among the 6 Buddhist monasteries, the 3 major monasteries of the Middle Continent had arrived and were standing together. When Hollow Monastery and Wisdom Monastery saw Monk Xianming being attacked, they shouted without hesitation and struck one after another. Hollow Finger. Wisdom Palm. There was a finger attack and palm strike. Formless Dharmic Seal. Monk Xianming harumphed coldly. Unhurriedly, he conjured a Dharmic seal with both hands and smashed it towards Su Zimo. The 3 void reversion monks retaliated at the same time with terrifying strength and torrential Dharmic powers. It was a frightening sight. Fufu, Su Zimo was the one who was courting death. He can't blame anyone. To think that he would dare to take the initiative against a void reversion. Fufu, he truly thinks too highly of himself and doesn't take the heroes of the world seriously. He probably did not expect himself to be attacked by 3 void reversions. Some shook their heads, some sneered, some gloated and some were worried. Master, what are you waiting for? Lang Ro turned around and questioned Dao Lord Lan Yu loudly. Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze flickered. Just as she was about to raise her hand, she pondered for a moment and closed her eyes. In the end, she did not interfere. This meant that Dao Lord Lan Yu had tacitly agreed to the 3 void reversions ganging up on Su Zimo. Dao being Yu Ding was quite a distance away from the Buddhist monasteries and it was a little too late for him to help. Right then, the situation on the battlefield changed. Dao being Chi Guy of Zephyr Thunder Palace as well as the void reversions of Chaos Essence Sect, Sword Sect, Hellfire Hall and Heavenly Dipper Sect who were watching the battle from not far away rose at the same time. The 5 void reversions remained silent with cold expressions as beams of light shone from their glabella. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying spirit consciousness burst forth, condensing into sabers, swords and spears in midair before smashing towards Su Zimo. Instantly, the void trembled and ripples appeared one after another. Pest! The crowd's expressions changed when they saw that. The 5 void reversions attacked at the same time. Furthermore, they did not test the waters by getting close to Su Zimo or using any Dharmic arts. Instead, they released Essence Spirit secret skills right away. A fatal trap. The void reversions had used Essence Spirit secret skills against a nascent soul. Furthermore, 5 void reversions attacked at the same time. This was equivalent to not giving Su Zimo any chance to survive or retaliate. They wanted him dead. It was a fatal trap. This was much more terrifying than the spirit consciousness attack released by perfected Lord Panglan earlier on. A single Essence Spirit secret skill was enough to kill perfected Lord Panglan's Essence Spirit, let alone 5 at the same time. The timing of the 5 void reversions was perfect. They had waited for this opportunity for a long time. That was because there were 3 void reversions of the Buddhist monasteries attacking Su Zimo, attracting his full attention. To be more precise, this was a hopeless situation. 8 void reversions working together to kill a nascent soul was something that had never happened in history. Fairy Luo Xue of Snowdrift Valley was enraged and stood up with a shocked expression. By now, it was too late for her to help. The only person who could stop everything was Dao Lord Lan Yu. However, she closed her eyes at that moment. The crowd fell silent at the sight of that. So what if he was the #1 perfected lord? It was just as Dao Lord Lan Yu had said, if one's edge was too sharp, it was easy to die. The thought of the fact that 3 people who were on the top of the phenomenon rankings would die here today was rather ironical. However, who would have thought that the 1,000-crane tea party that was held once every 1,000 years would become the burial ground of these monster incarnates? Just as everyone was lamenting internally, Su Zimo, who was in the center of the storm, retracted his palm. His gaze was as deep as the sea and he was frighteningly calm. His black hair fluttered without wind. In the blink of an eye, strands of scarlet hair were mixed in between his black hair. Su Zimo's eyes turned scarlet and black respectively. Crackle. The sound of bones cracking could be heard from within Su Zimo's body. His body expanded and rose. A shuddering aura of destruction emanated from his body. It was savage and primitive, as though it came from the primordial era. Demonic chi surged and a torrential ferocity engulfed the world. Su Zimo's clothes were torn and scarlet scales appeared on the surface of his skin like metal plates that were burning red. His eyes were filled with killing intent, as though they were the doors and windows to hell. Heavens, what sort of monster is that? Why can't I circulate my bloodline? What bloodline does this person have that's suppressing my bloodline? Is that a dragon? The group of cultivators trembled with endless fear in their eyes. Fairy Luo Xue, Hang Qiuyu and the others shuddered. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, they witnessed Su Zimo transforming into a dragon and were extremely shocked. It was also because of his dragonification that Su Zimo was able to kill the god race completely. But now, the Su Zimo before them was even more frightening than the existence who turned into a dragon in Myriad Phenomenon City 100 years ago. Someone's going to die. Almost at the same time, Fairy Luo Xue, Hang Qiuyu and the others murmured. In Su Zimo's consciousness, the 2 essence spirits had already fused into one. Since the 8 void reversions attacked at the same time, he could not care less and could only fuse his essence spirit to defend against this fatal trap. The attacks of the 5 void reversions from Chaos Essence Sect, Sword Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace and Hellfire Hall had triggered the killing intent in his heart entirely. Since Dao Lord Lan Yu wanted to feign ignorance, nobody could blame him for going on a massacre. Chapter 963. One Punch. Chapter 963. One Punch. Although the void reversions of Zephyr Thunder Palace, Chaos Essence Sect and the other 3 sects attacked later, Essence Spirit secret skills were instantaneous and their attacks were the first to arrive. After his dragonification, Su Zimo activated the Mingwang prayer beads right away. Buzz! His left wrist shone with bedazzling golden lights that enveloped his entire body. In the blink of an eye, a shimmering golden barrier appeared around him and ancient mysterious Sanskrit appeared. It was flawless and divine. Essence Spirit Dharmic weapon? The eyes of Dao being Chi-Gai and the others focused. Among Dharmic weapons, Essence Spirit Dharmic weapons were the rarest. Furthermore, based on their judgment, the Dharmic weapon on Su Zimo's wrist was of an extremely high grade and was a rare treasure for them. Greed flashed through their eyes at the same time. Su Zimo had way too many treasures on him. After killing that lad and seizing his treasures, there would definitely be a fierce battle. The creation Green Lotus had already fallen into the hands of the Buddhist monasteries. They had to get their hands on the remaining treasures. Bang! 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 The moment the golden barrier was formed, the spirit consciousness released by the 5 essence spirit secret skills descended. Any later and Su Zimo would have been killed by the 5 spirit consciousnesses. The golden barrier trembled and the Sanskrit dimmed. The 2 different energies froze for a split second and the golden barrier exploded instantaneously. However, the power of the 5 spirit consciousnesses was halved as well. Swoosh! The remnant of the 5 spirit consciousnesses shot into Su Zimo's glabella right away. The 5 void reversions sneered internally when they saw that. So what if he had an essence spirit Dharmic weapon? His cultivation realm was not high enough, and he could not unleash the true power of the Dharmic weapon. Furthermore, this was an essence spirit secret skill released by the 5 of them together. Even if the essence spirit Dharmic weapon managed to defend against most of the power, the remnant of the spirit consciousness would be able to enter Su Zimo's consciousness and kill him. 5 spirit consciousnesses barged into Su Zimo's sea of consciousness, creating waves that crashed towards his essence spirit. Although the creation green lotus was still in Monk Xianming's hands, the 45 lotus seeds surrounded Su Zimo's essence spirit and had not once left his side. The creation green lotus could not defend against the power of spirit consciousnesses. However, the lotus seeds were essence spirit Dharmic weapons. The 45 lotus seeds turned into rays of light that circled around Su Zimo's essence spirit, emitting a terrifying sharp aura. The moment the 5 spirit consciousnesses descended, they were sliced into pieces by the 45 lotus seeds and their power was almost depleted. When the remnant of the spirit consciousness landed on Su Zimo's essence spirit that was covered with dragon scales, it did not cause any ripples and dissipated silently. At the same time, the attacks of the 3 void reversions of the Buddhist monasteries arrived. At that moment, Su Zimo had just defended against 5 spirit consciousness attacks, and it was too late for him to raise his hand to defend against the attacks of the 3 void reversion monks. The only possibility was if the 3 void reversions paused for a moment to give him a breather to react. However, that was impossible. The 2 monks of Hollow and Wisdom monasteries sighed internally and revealed pained expressions. They could not help but hold back slightly. However, Monk Xianming of Formless Monastery knew that he was the one in the wrong for snatching away Su Zimo's creation green lotus. The only way he could cause the creation green lotus to have no owner was by killing Su Zimo. A cold glint flashed through Monk Xianming's eyes as that thought flashed through his mind. The peerless Dharmic seal he conjured with both hands turned even more ferocious. Right then, Su Zimo opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar. Roar! Heaven and earth rumbled. The roar was majestic and powerful, piercing through metal and cracking rocks. It exuded an ancient and boundless aura that contained endless rage, as though it wanted to shatter the stars. This was not a human voice. It was a dragon roar. Everything went silent. The world seemed to have gone silent after the dragon roared. Given Su Zimo's blood qi, the lethality of his dragon roar was extremely terrifying and the first to be struck were the 3 void reversion monks. The 3 of them shuddered as though they were struck by lightning. Their eyes widened and their minds went blank momentarily. The hollow finger and wisdom palm paused momentarily. Monk Xianming's formless Dharmic seal was almost shattered by the roar. Since the 3 of them were in charge of escorting the nascent soul paragons to this place, their strength was naturally not to be underestimated. If it was any other ordinary void reversion, that roar would have destroyed their souls. However, that brief pause was enough for Su Zimo. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo's blood qi surged and he threw 3 punches at the 3 void reversion monks like lightning. Bang! 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 Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Even void reversion monks could not defend against Su Zimo's body. Furthermore, this was a full channel of his blood qi after his dragonification. The power that was released could only be described as destructive. The hollow finger of Hollow Monastery's monk was shattered by Su Zimo's punch and his entire palm was smashed into pulp. The outcome of the void reversion monk of Wisdom Monastery was almost similar. The moment Wisdom Palm descended, it was smashed by Su Zimo's punch and his entire arm was snapped. It was crippled completely. The 2 void reversion monks cried out in pain and their faces turned pale. They fell backwards heavily into the crowd, looking extremely wretched. This was Su Zimo showing mercy. Although he had transformed into a dragon, he had not lost his rationality. Earlier on, the 2 void reversion monks had shown compassion and retracted their strength. Inadvertently, their act of showing mercy saved themselves instead. Although Su Zimo was decisive in killing, he was not bloodthirsty. What he wanted was to be able to do anything he wanted and pay everything an eye for an eye. He only killed those that deserved to be killed. Monk Xianming was someone that deserved to be killed. Su Zimo threw out 3 punches in succession. 2 of them went towards the hollow finger and wisdom palm of the 2 monks. However, the 3rd punch landed right on Monk Xianming's head. Poof! Monk Xianming's head was smashed into pieces and his essence spirit was destroyed. He was shocked by the dragon roar and could not react in time. He was killed by a single punch without any chance of resisting. The crowd was shocked. Instantly, things changed on the battlefield. No one expected that after the attacks of 8 void reversions in unison, 2 of them would be severely injured and 1 of them was dead. How was that possible? The essence spirit secret skills of 5 void reversions could not even kill this man. How did this person even have strength left to retaliate? It was not only the crowd that was confused. The 5 void reversions of Zephyr Thunder Palace, Chaos Essence Sect and the other 3 sects were equally confused. The 5 of them were shocked by the dragon roar as well, but they snapped out of their stupor before long. Immediately after, the 5 of them were bewildered and their eyes shone with endless confusion. Su Zimo severely injured 2 void reversion monks of Hollow Monastery and Wisdom Monastery with 2 punches and killed monk Xianming with 1 punch. Without stopping, he pushed down with his palm and snatched the creation Green Lotus back. The 5 of you, hand over your lives. Suddenly, Su Zimo turned around and glared at Dao Being Chi-Gai and the others. He grinned and released a torrential killing intent, resembling a god of massacre that had just walked out from the depths of hell. Chapter 964. A Suffocating Counterattack. Chapter 964. A Suffocating Counterattack. Su Zimo injected Dharmic powers and tossed the creation Green Lotus out. The creation Green Lotus turned into a streak of light and sped towards the void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect, arriving instantly. Boom! In a flash, Su Zimo charged towards Dao Being Chi-Gai and the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper Sect. Everywhere he passed, sand and rocks flew. In midair, Su Zimo condensed a sword finger and touched his glabella gently before pointing in the direction of the void reversion of Sword Sect. Shoo! 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 45 rays of green light shot out from his glabella and pierced towards the void reversion of Sword Sect. Those were the 45 lotus seeds. Everything was released in an instant. At the same time, Su Zimo conjured hand seals and 2 flames of different colors and auras appeared in his palms. A ball of scarlet and a ball of gold. They were the immortal and Buddhist Tao fires. Within his consciousness, his essence spirit was already pushed to its limits. Endless Dharmic powers surged into the 2 Tao flames. Condense! Su Zimo closed in on the 2 flames and channeled a supreme secret skill, fusing them together to form a dual-color Tao fire. The Samadhi Tao fire. Nangong Ling, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian widened their eyes in shock. There were very few cultivators in the entire mystic courtyard who could recognize that Dharmic art. The 3 of them were legacy disciples of Tao Lord Scarlet Star, and were naturally cultivating the Samadhi Tao fire as well. However, they had yet to succeed. To them, the secret skill that Su Zimo was using was the Samadhi Tao fire itself. However, there was still a difference from the Samadhi Tao fire in their impression. The biggest difference was that the Samadhi Tao fire had 3 balls of flames. However, Su Zimo only condensed 2 balls of flames. Furthermore, the Samadhi Tao flames they cultivated were of the same color and were scarlet without any golden flames. The thing that truly shocked and confused them was the fact that although there were only 2 balls of flames in Su Zimo's palms, the Tao fire that was formed from the fusion of the 2 Tao flames seemed to be even more terrifying than the Samadhi Tao fire they knew. The 3 of them did not know that the nature of the Samadhi Tao fire had completely changed in Su Zimo's hands. The original meaning of Samadhi was the essence, chi and spirit Samadhi. However, when it came to Su Zimo, he interpreted it as the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Samadhi. At his level of comprehension, how could the power of that Dharmic art not increase? The original Samadhi Tao fire was the top Dharmic art of the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra, and was also one of Tao Lord Extreme Fire's trump cards. Su Zimo's Samadhi Tao fire raised the Dharmic art to a brand new level. No one had witnessed its might before, nor could they ever imagine what it was like. Therefore, even though Su Zimo did not condense a true Samadhi Tao fire and merely fused the Tao fire of the immortal and Buddhist sects together, its might was still terrifying. Go! Su Zimo hollered softly. The ball of Dvyadi Tao fire floated and pushed towards the void reversion of Hellfire Hall. At that moment, Su Zimo had already arrived before Dao being Qi Gai and the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper Sect. He extended his palm and enveloped both of them. It was absolutely terrifying. All the cultivators widened their eyes in shock. Initially, Dao being Yuding wanted to rush over to help. However, at that moment, he realized that he did not know where to start. Initially, Fairy Luo Xue stood up and wanted to help Su Zimo as well. However, at that moment, she sat back down slowly. No one could imagine that Su Zimo, a nascent soul, would be able to break through such a deadly trap. Furthermore, his counterattack was so ferocious and frightening that it was suffocating. After severely injuring 2 void reversion monks and killing monk Xian Ming, Su Zimo's attacked single-handedly against 5 people right away. All 5 void reversions were within his attack range. That was the boldness of the number 1 perfected lord. That was the means of the number 1 perfected lord. There were no attacks or solo fights. Since they wanted to fight, none of the 5 void reversions could escape. The first person he came into contact with was the void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect. The void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect did not dare to be careless when he saw the creation Green Lotus approaching. He swiped his storage bag and summoned a gigantic silver shield in front of him. After injecting Dharmic powers, the shield's aura surged. Whoosh! 4 bedazzling lights shone on the silver shield. It was a supreme-grade Dao being Dharmic weapon. According to his plan, he would first defend against the attack of the creation Green Lotus, and it would be best if he could retrieve it before counterattacking. However, he had truly underestimated the creation Green Lotus and Su Zimo's strength. This was a grade 5 creation Green Lotus that was comparable to a connate Dao being Dharmic weapon. His shield could not defend against it at all. Furthermore, the creation Green Lotus was Su Zimo's destiny Dharmic weapon and was even more powerful. Su Zimo had thrown it out with all his might. Its burst power was no different from a meteor crashing. Boom! The creation Green Lotus collided with the silver shield and let out a deafening bang. Chaos Essence Sect's void reversion's expression changed starkly. Sensing the power of the collision, he suddenly realized that something was amiss. Unfortunately, it was too late. With almost no pause in between, the silver shield exploded and the creation Green Lotus charged forward, charging towards the void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect. Ah! He only had time to shout before his head was crushed by the creation Green Lotus. Before his essence spirit could escape, it was destroyed on the spot. If he had chosen to use his destiny Dharmic weapon to defend against that attack with all his might, he might have had a chance to survive. Unfortunately, not only did he underestimate the creation Green Lotus, he also underestimated Su Zimo. He was still thinking of counterattacking, but he did not know that the scythe of the Reaper was already hovering around his neck. He was killed by a single move. Chaos Essence Sect's void reversion had just died and Su Zimo's other attack had already arrived. The 45 lotus seeds arrived before the void reversion of Sword Sect densely and sealed off all his escape routes. The void reversion of Sword Sect wanted to throw out a few talismans to defend against the attack of the lotus seeds. However, he caught sight of Chaos Essence Sect's void reversion from the corner of his eye and was shocked. Instantly, the void reversion of Sword Sect had a grim expression and did not dare to be careless. As he tore apart a few defensive talismans, he summoned his destiny Dharmic weapon right away. Buzz! Relying on the sword in his hands, its blade quivered with a buzzing sound that grew increasingly clear. It was a perfect Dao being Dharmic weapon. The sword had followed him for many years and had been tempered by his essence spirit for thousands of years. It was extremely powerful. He believed that he would be able to defend against the attack of the actual creation Green Lotus, let alone the 45 lotus seeds. He did not make any moves and merely flicked his wrist gently. Beams of bright and cold sword lights burst forth and formed sword chi barriers around him. Clang! Clang! The sword chi barrier was impenetrable and blocked all 45 lotus seeds outside. Everyone's eyes lit up. As expected of a sword sect cultivator. That sword technique was truly peerless. Su Zimo's killing move was dispelled with a single slash. Right then, Hang Qiuyu seemed to have sensed something and his pupils constricted as he exclaimed, "Senior brother, watch out!" Chapter 965. Complete Annihilation. Chapter 965. Complete Annihilation. Senior brother, watch out. The void reversion of Sword Sect scoffed internally when he heard Hang Qiuyu's warning. Relying on the advantage of his destiny Dharmic weapon and the might of his sect's sword art, he had already blocked all 45 lotus seeds. The few talismans that he tore apart were unnecessary. What was there to be careful about? The moment he thought of that, his expression changed. Something was not right. Although the 45 lotus seeds were cut down, they shone with a green glow that penetrated his sword chi barrier and the defense of his talisman, surging into his consciousness. The lotus seeds were essence spirit Dharmic weapons. Although the sword light talisman could block the main body of the lotus seeds, it could not block the killing power of the spirit consciousness attack released by them. By the time the void reversion of Sword Sect noticed it, it was already too late. Poof, poof, poof. 45 rays of light surged into his consciousness and pierced through his essence spirit like a volley of arrows. Clang! His sword fell and the talismans dissipated. The void reversion of Sword Sect's eyes were unfocused and there were no wounds on his body. However, there was no life within him and he collapsed to the ground. This was a killing move that targeted the essence spirit. Although he looked uninjured on the surface, his essence spirit was gone and he was dead. Many Sword Sect cultivators were shocked when they saw the void reversion fall and retreated with pale faces. Only Hang Qiuyu stood at the front with a conflicted expression and sighed deeply. In some ways he was lucky. He had witnessed Su Zimo's methods before. Therefore, he was fearful and would not try to challenge that person again. However, many people had not seen it before. Therefore, many people wanted to kill the monster incarnate. However, none of them had seen how many corpses were piled beneath the feet of this monster incarnate. Which of those corpses were not paragons when they were alive? None of them would ever be able to experience that suffocating fear if they had not exchanged blows with him personally. Hang Qiuyu no longer wanted to experience it. He sighed and put away the corpse of the void reversion. The only thing he could do was not take revenge but return to the sect and bury it properly. That was all. On the battlefield. The entire process seemed very slow upon narration but in fact, it occurred in the split of a moment. With 2 void reversions dead, Su Zimo's Dviadi Dao fire had already arrived before the void reversion of Hellfire Hall. He hesitated for a moment. When he saw that Su Zimo had conjured his Dao fire and attacked him, his first reaction was disdain. Although he was afraid of Su Zimo's physique and was afraid of melee combat, he was not afraid of other methods of combat. After all, the difference between their essence spirits was a major cultivation realm and Dharmic powers was multiple times. There was no way to make up for that difference. Therefore, he conjured a Dharmic art and was prepared to retaliate with hellfire. However, right after, he saw 2 void reversions of Chaos Essence Sect and Sword Sect perish. That shocked him and he almost turned to flee. Before long, he calmed down. The 2 void reversions of Chaos Essence Sect and Sword Sect died mainly because of the power of the creation Green Lotus. But now, he had no reason to fear this fire Dharmic art. Furthermore, he had already conjured his Dharmic art in front of everyone. If he were to turn and flee, he would definitely become a laughingstock. At that thought, he made the worst decision of his life. It was also his final decision. How dare you show off your insignificant skills? The void reversion of Hellfire Hall sneered and conjured a ball of hellfire with both hands. It emitted a sinister and cold aura and charged towards the incoming Dao fire. There was no intense collision as expected. Shing! Almost instantly, his hellfire extinguished as though it had encountered a terrifying power. After Su Zimo's 2 essence spirits fused, his essence spirit was no weaker than any void reversion or even stronger. The Dao fire of the Buddhist monasteries alone was enough to suppress the hellfire. Furthermore, it was a Dviadi Dao fire that was fused together with the immortal and Buddhist Daos. It was almost a complete suppression. Swoosh! In the widened eyes of the void reversion of Hellfire Hall, the dual-colored Dao fire pushed through everything and engulfed him in flames. Ah! A hysterical shriek sounded from the flames. After a few breaths, there was no sound. The flames gradually extinguished and dust fell. That might be the only trace left behind by the void reversion of Hellfire Hall. The power of the Dviadi Dao fire was so terrifying that it burned a void reversion into ashes. In the blink of an eye, 3 out of the 5 void reversions were dead. The entire process was so short that Su Zimo had already arrived before Dao being Qi Gai and the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper Sect. The moment he attacked, the two of them were enveloped. The two of them were about to join forces to hold out for a moment when they realized that 3 void reversions were already dead. That scene shocked both of them. Before they attacked, they were already certain that they could not fight Su Zimo in close combat. Right now, the two of them were merely inches away from Su Zimo. That was equivalent to half a step into the gates of hell. Ah! The void reversion of Heavenly Dipper Sect roared and prepared to fight to the death. Su Zimo turned his head slightly and stared at him. Suddenly, his right eye turned white and emitted a faint glow. It was extremely strange. The void reversion of Heavenly Dipper Sect suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. Before he could react, a blinding beam of light shot out from Su Zimo's right eye and entered his head with a scorching aura. All his energy was focused on defending against Su Zimo's melee attacks. He did not expect such a change. Poof! The void reversion of Heavenly Dipper Sect's head was penetrated by the blazing beam and his essence spirit was destroyed. He couldn't have been any more dead. Another person was killed by the Illumination Dragon Eye. In the blink of an eye, Dao being Qi Gai was the only one left. When he sensed Su Zimo's palm descending from above and knew that even the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper Sect who was beside him was dead, he was scared out of his wits. Even if he had 500 kilograms of strength, he could not muster a single bit of it at the moment. Dao being Qi Gai's mind went blank, leaving only a strong desire to survive. His eyes were filled with horror as he shouted instinctively, "Perfected Lord, please spare me." Against Su Zimo, he was scared out of his wits. Swoosh! The palm that seemed like it could destroy the world suddenly stopped. It hovered above his head motionlessly. When the cultivators saw that, they felt an unimaginable shock. This was a void reversion of Zephyr Thunder Palace. To think that he would end up begging for mercy under the palm of a nascent soul. Su Zimo looked at that person quietly with an indifferent expression and curled his lips slightly, asking in a mocking manner, "Spare you?" Dao being Qi Gai's face was pale as he nodded repeatedly. His lips quivered when he sensed the killing intent Su Zimo emanated and the bloodline that seemed as though it originated from the primordial era. He could no longer speak. "It's too late." Su Zimo sighed and slapped down. Piak! Dao being Qi Gai's expression froze and his eyes widened. Streaks of blood appeared on his face. His head was smashed by that palm. His essence spirit was shattered and he died on the spot. In the blink of an eye, all 5 void reversions were killed without exception. Chapter 966. Lan Yu's Attitude. Chapter 966. Lan Yu's Attitude. The massive mystic courtyard went completely silent. The group of cultivators looked at the battlefield in a daze and the tall and terrifying figure on the battlefield, forgetting to breathe for a moment. Who would have believed such an outcome if they had not witnessed it personally? The nascent soul paragon of Snowdrift Valley, Ling Bai, was dumbfounded and his eyes were filled with shock. Fairy Luo Shue's words were the only thing that remained in his mind. Since he is here now, unless a Dharma characteristic shows up at the Thousand Crane Tea Party, no one else will be a threat to him. It was a prophecy. The encirclement of 8 void reversions was easily destroyed by this person. 6 of them died and 2 of them were severely injured. That was the true number 1 perfected lord. Nangong Ling, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian suddenly thought of something. Previously, they met with danger outside Windcloud City and were abducted by a Dharma characteristic of Hellfire Hall along with 7 void reversions. However, they managed to return safe and sound later on. Initially, the 3 of them thought that it was done by some supreme expert. By the looks of it, that peerless expert was most likely Su Zimo. That Su Zimo is truly a fiend demon. That's right, he is completely exposed and the truth can't be hidden any longer. What fiend demon is that? Why didn't the demon-revealing mirror reflect his true form? Gradually, the crowd broke into hushed discussions. The group of cultivators instinctively looked towards the sect master of Thousand Crane Sect, Dao Lord Lan Yu. At that moment, Dao Lord Lan Yu's expression was extremely terrible. Earlier on, when the 8 void reversions attacked at the same time, she chose to ignore them and watch with folded arms. In fact, she even closed her eyes. She had a good plan. Su Zimo had already offended many super sects, and at the most, he was backed by the declining 100 Refinement Sect. If 100 Refinement Sect could not even protect themselves, how could they protect Su Zimo? Even if Su Zimo were to die here, it would be fine. No one would cause trouble for her or Thousand Crane Sect. That way, she would be able to account for the deaths of Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglan, and the others. However, not long after she closed her eyes, she heard an ancient howl that shook the world. Even her mind was shaken. Dragon Roar. Dao Lord Lan Yu froze for a moment, unable to react. Why was there a dragon roar in the mystic courtyard? Instinctively, she opened her eyes and saw that 2 void reversions of the Buddhist monasteries were severely injured and monk Xian Ming was dead. The void reversions of Chaos Essence Sect, Sword Sect and Hellfire Hall had just died as well. A tall and strong figure with a terrifying aura and scarlet scales that covered his body charged towards Dao Being Chi Gai and the void reversion of Zephyr Thunder Palace. Dragon Race. Dao Lord Lan Yu's heart skipped a beat. Although the tall figure before her did not take on the form of a dragon, the aura he exuded was no different from that of a dragon. With that delay, the void reversion of Sword Sect was killed by the Illumination Dragon Eye. Immediately after, Dao Being Chi Gai was killed by that person as well. It was only then that Dao Lord Lan Yu realized that the tall figure with dragon scales and red-black eyes was Su Zimo. Everything was too late. While her eyes were closed, the battle was over and the dust was settled. Dao Lord Lan Yu stood up slowly and exuded an extremely powerful aura, suppressing everything before summoning the demon-revealing mirror. Whoosh! A beam of light shone down and enveloped Su Zimo. With a single thought, Su Zimo separated his 2 essence spirits and hid his scarlet-haired Een spirit. It was still within his consciousness. Crackle! In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already returned to normal, turning into that handsome cultivator with clear, pitch-black eyes with refined features. Even under the cover of the demon-revealing mirror, his expression was indifferent. This change made Dao Lord Lan Yu feel like she was being toyed with. Her expression darkened completely. Su Zimo, I don't care if you're a human or a demon. Since you dare to start a massacre at the Thousand Crane Tea Party, it's equivalent to Sect Master. Before Dao Lord Lan Yu could finish, she was interrupted by Su Zimo. All the cultivators present witnessed the reason why I killed them. Everyone can naturally come to an agreement of whether it was right or wrong. Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo continued, in addition, this conflict could have been avoided. Since someone chose to ignore it and stand by idly, don't blame me for starting a massacre. Are you accusing me? Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze turned cold as she asked murderously. Her patience had been exhausted. It was a complete failure for the Thousand Crane Tea Party to develop to this point. As for the root of the failure, it was because of a single person. It was Su Zimo who was right before her. I can't say that I'm accusing you. However, I do have something that I wish to discuss with you, Sect Master. Glancing at Lang Ro beside him, Su Zimo nodded before raising his voice. Sect Master Lan Yu, it's fine if you want to make use of the marriage alliance to befriend Chaos Essence Sect and obtain their support. However, you should at least respect Lang Ro's intentions. What did you say? Feeling guilty, Dao Lord Lan Yu hollered. This was not a glorious affair and everyone knew what was going on. However, it was another matter exposing it in public. None of the cultivators present are fools. Which of them can't tell what you're trying to do? Su Zimo replied indifferently. Lang Ro is a disciple of Thousand Crane Sect and it's not wrong for her to join you. However, you have no right to decide her future. You're pushing her into a pit of fire. Lang Ro looked at Su Zimo and the coldness in her eyes gradually dissipated. She knew that Su Zimo was speaking up for her. Those were her heartfelt words, but she did not dare to say them. Lang Ro did not dare to imagine what her outcome would be without Su Zimo. Su Zimo shook his head and smiled mockingly. Furthermore, the facts have proven that you have poor judgment. Yi Tiancheng isn't some incredible monster incarnate either. I've already killed him. The reason why you chose Chaos Essence Sect was because of the two paragons that rose to power in this generation. Now, one of them is dead. The other won't get to live for long either. Su Zimo, let's see how long more you can be arrogant. A perfected Lord of Chaos Essence Sect stood out and said deeply. Sect Master Lan Yu, Su Zimo is no different from a fiend demon. He massacred human cultivators wantonly at the Thousand Crane Tea Party. If you can't account to us for this, our few immortal sects won't let this go lightly. A perfected Lord of Sword Sect mustered his courage and shouted. I've already released a messenger crane. Once Sword Sect receives the news, a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord will definitely descend personally. At that time, let's see how your Thousand Crane Sect is going to explain things. That's right. A perfected Lord of Heavenly Dipper Sect grit his teeth. Dharma characteristic experts from our sect will rush over immediately as well. No, Master. Lang Ro said hurriedly. There's nothing unusual about Su Zimo under the demon revealing mirror. He's a human. Perhaps it was just a secret skill that he cultivated earlier on. Furthermore, it's not his fault at all. Fairy Luo Xue stood out as well and cupped her fists. Sect Master Lan Yu, don't forget that 100 years ago in Myriad Phenomenon City, Thousand Crane Sect owed Su Zimo a huge favor. Tao Lord Lan Yu's gaze was cold and she said nothing. The crowd turned to look at her, waiting for her attitude. Her attitude would determine Su Zimo's life and death. Chapter 967, Uncle Master, I'm late. Chapter 967. Uncle Master, I'm late. Tao Lord Lan Yu was expressionless. There were so many people who died at the Thousand Crane Tea Party this time round, and each of them was more influential than the last. Even 7 of the void reversions died. There was no way she could escape responsibility. If this was not handled right, Thousand Crane Sect would definitely be implicated. However, Thousand Crane Sect was indeed indebted to Su Zimo. If she were to kill Su Zimo here right now, Thousand Crane Sect would definitely be labeled as ungrateful and incur countless criticism. After pondering for a long time, Tao Lord Lan Yu made up her mind. Su Zimo, if not for the fact that you've done Thousand Crane Sect a favor in the past, I'll definitely kill you right here today. Tao Lord Lan Yu's voice was cold. However, Lang Ro, Little Fatty and the others were delighted when they heard that. From what she said, it seemed like Tao Lord Lan Yu was not going to lay her hands on Su Zimo. Pausing for a moment, Tao Lord Lan Yu changed the topic. However, you've caused a calamity today. Even Thousand Crane Sect can't protect you. I reminded you repeatedly to restrain your sharpness, but you refused to listen. You can't blame others. Su Zimo's eyes flashed with mockery as he said indifferently, There's no need to beat around the bush, Sect Master. Just speak your mind. Tao Lord Lan Yu took a deep breath and said calmly, I won't kill you, but you can't leave Thousand Crane Sect either. Stay here as a guest. A commotion broke out in the crowd. That's a heartless move. That's way too ruthless. Although she did not attack Su Zimo on the surface, he's still going to die once the Dharma characteristic experts of Chaos Essence Sect, Sword Sect and Heavenly Dipper Sect arrive. Su Zimo won't be able to escape death if he's held back in this place. With that, Thousand Crane Sect will be accountable to Chaos Essence Sect and the other immortal sections. Furthermore, the most important thing is that Tao Lord Lan Yu did not attack Su Zimo and will not be labeled as ungrateful. She's using a borrowed knife to kill him. None of the cultivators present were fools to be able to cultivate to the nascent soul realm. They quickly understood what Tao Lord Lan Yu was thinking and discussed softly. Foo. Su Zimo chuckled and asked instead, why? You want to detain me in Thousand Crane Sect? Junior, don't be ungrateful. Tao Lord Lan Yu said indifferently, as the sect master, I'm cordially inviting you to stay in Thousand Crane Sect for a few days. Furthermore, you're best friends with Lang Ro. Since you haven't seen each other for 100 years, you must have a lot to say. I'll grant you your wish. Master. Shut up. Lang Ro was interrupted by a glare from Tao Lord Lan Yu the moment she spoke. How self-righteous. A mocking look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he sneered. Tao Lord Lan Yu, You don't carry a single trace of righteousness and heroic aura of the immortal sections. On the other hand, you've mastered the art of hypocrisy and craftiness completely. Su Zimo retracted his smile and asked slowly, what if I insist on leaving? Then don't blame me for being impolite and suppressing you here. Dao Lord Lan Yu said coldly, Junior, since I've already said that, I advise you to behave yourself and suffer less. The pressure of a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord descended slowly and enveloped the entire mystic courtyard. All the nascent souls present felt as though they were carrying a massive mountain and could not move at all. Ha 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 ha. Su Zimo laughed into the skies. Even against the might of a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord, he was still fearless as he shouted, Lan Yu, listen up. Although I can't defeat you, you're not enough to stop me if I want to leave. His heroic attitude was torrential. Against a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord that was 2 major cultivation realms above them, it was already rare for the nascent souls present to be neither servile nor overbearing. None of the cultivators would even dare to dream of challenging the authority of a Dharma characteristic like Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo was not bragging. Indeed, his combat strength was no match for Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. Back when he killed the Dharma characteristic Dao Lord of Hellfire Hall, it was because the latter was at the end of his lifespan and was about to die. Otherwise, he would not have been able to kill the latter with Baron. Right now, there were 3 Dharma characteristic Dao Lords in the mystic courtyard with exuberant blood chi. They were clearly at their peak. Su Zimo's Baron would possess an almost negligible impact on the 3 Dharma characteristics. However, he had many trump cards. With the combination of his 2 essence spirits and the Mingwang prayer beads, he could temporarily break free from the suppression of Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. Even Dharma characteristic Dao Lords could not stop him if he released his blood escape technique. Junior, I'll teach you a lesson today for your provocation. Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze turned cold as her glabella shimmered. She was prepared to attack personally. Su Zimo's eyes lit up and his blood escape technique was about to explode. Hold on. Right then, a soft shout sounded from the distant skies, interrupting the tense atmosphere in the mystic courtyard. Everyone turned to look. 3 cultivators approached from the horizon, and one of them was a middle-aged man who was relatively young. The other 2 cultivators were old men with white hair and beard. Although they looked like they were close to their later years, they were hale and hearty and had rosy cheeks. It's Master! Nangong Ling, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian's eyes lit up as they exclaimed. Among the 3 cultivators, the middle-aged man was their master, Dao Lord Scarlet Star. They did not recognize the 2 old men beside Dao Lord Scarlet Star. Apart from Dao Lord Scarlet Star, the 2 elders were also at the Dharma characteristic realm. The Dharma characteristics of 100 Refinement Sect has arrived first. Seems like they are here to take Su Zimo away. Fufu, it won't be that easy. Don't forget, we're in the 1000 Crane Sect. If Dao Lord Lan Yu doesn't agree to it, do you think the 3 Dharma characteristics will be able to take him away just like that? Let's just look on. This is going to be interesting. The cultivators discussed excitedly. In the blink of an eye, Dao Lord Scarlet Star and the 2 old men descended in the mystic courtyard. A look of shock flashed through their eyes as they looked at the dilapidated courtyard and the corpses that had yet to be cleaned up. When Dao Lord Scarlet Star caught sight of Yi Tiancheng's corpse, his pupils constricted. However, he calmed down very quickly, as though he was already prepared for the scene before him. What happened next was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The crowd that was initially quiet exploded. Under countless gazes, Dao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and came before Su Zimo. He bowed slightly and greeted with the mannerisms of a junior, saying softly, Uncle Master, I'm late. The crowd fell into an uproar. All the cultivators present had more or less heard of Dao Lord Scarlet Star. Even if they had not heard of it, Dao Lord Scarlet Star was a Dharma characteristic expert after all. But now, he was bowing respectfully to a nascent soul. What was going on? The cultivators present were shocked. Even Nangong Ling and the other 2 were stunned. The 3 of them knew that deep in his heart, Dao Lord Scarlet Star did not want to acknowledge Su Zimo as his uncle master. Initially, he could only grit his teeth and agree to it, forcing himself to call Su Zimo Little Uncle Master. Furthermore, in order to save face for Dao Lord Scarlet Star,
Su Zimo had once said that Tao Lord Scarlet Star could address him directly by name if there were any outsiders around. To think that Tao Lord Scarlet Star would do such a thing in front of so many factions and the eyes of countless cultivators. Nangong Ling and the other two did not see any hint of reluctance on Tao Lord Scarlet Star's face. To be precise, when Tao Lord Scarlet Star learned of Su Zimo's true identity from Tao Lord Extreme Fire, he was more than willing to address the latter as his uncle master. He was respectful towards Su Zimo not because of seniority. It was because the young man before him was worthy of his respect.
Chapter 968. Shangguan Zi. Chapter 968. Shangguan Zi. No wonder he's so fearless. So, he has helpers. Tao Lord Lan Yu had a calm expression as she sneered. Scarlet Star, you think that you're able to take him away from me with just the three of you Dharma characteristics? The three of us are enough. Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and looked at Tao Lord Lan Yu with a calm voice. Tao Lord Lan Yu sneered once more. This is Thousand Crane Sect. As long as I give the order, all three of you will have to stay here. Girl, you're way too arrogant. Among the three of them, an old man with a walking stick stood out, exuding a dignified aura. Another old man asked in a deep voice, Girl, where's your master? Tao Lord Lan Yu frowned and flicked her sleeves. Who are you guys? Do you think my master is someone you can meet whenever you want? Elder Gu. Right then, the void reversion of the ancient array sect exclaimed in disbelief. Yes. The old man nodded and looked at the void reversion of the ancient array sect. Little monkey, is that you? It's me, it's me. The void reversion nodded humbly and hurried forward to greet with a bow. This person had a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks. Little Monkey was a nickname for him that not many people knew of. Grandpa Gu. Right then, Tang Yu of Elixir Yang Sect exclaimed with widened eyes. Tang Yu ran over to take a closer look and could not help but laugh. Grandpa Gu, it's really you. I didn't dare to recognize you at first. Little Tang, how old are you already? Why do you still like to dress up like a boy? The elder with the surname Gu had a doting expression as he chuckled as well. Grandpa Gu, aren't you in seclusion? Why are you here? Tang Yu asked curiously. The elder with the surname Gu retracted his smile and said indifferently, I've been in seclusion for a long time and my bones are a little rusty. It's a good time for me to come out for a walk and meet an old friend. Tao Lord Lan Yu frowned slightly. For some reason, she suddenly felt uneasy. Tao Lord Scarlet Star raised his voice. Lan Yu, may I ask where Senior Shangguan is? I told you my master is in seclusion. Tao Lord Lan Yu said coldly. Tao Lord Scarlet Star harumphed. Lan Yu, I arrived before this tea party began because I had something to discuss with Senior Shangguan. However, you rejected me outright. What are your intentions? It was only then that Su Zimo, Nangong Ling and the others realized that Tao Lord Scarlet Star had already visited Thousand Crane Sect a few days ago. However, he did not manage to meet the person he wanted to and returned empty-handed. I'm the sect master of Thousand Crane Sect. I can make the decision for everything here. Tao Lord Lan Yu's gaze flickered as her voice turned colder. There was a hint of anger in her tone that could be released at any moment. Elder Gu, who was leaning on his walking stick, said slowly, Girl, tell Shangguan that her old friends from Elixir Yang Sect and Ancient Array Sect are here to visit and she will come out of seclusion. Old friends? Foo-foo. Tao Lord Lan Yu sneered. Pardon me for being blunt. I've seen all of Master's old friends, but I've never seen the two of you. We've known your master for thousands of years. At that time, you weren't even around yet. Elder Gu blew his beard impatiently. Tao Lord Lan Yu's expression darkened completely as she said coldly, What a joke. If any random cultivator says that he's an old friend of Master's and wants to meet her, wouldn't Master be annoyed to death? Scarlet Star, I've been extremely tolerant on account that you guys are from the unorthodox groups as well. If you guys continue to push your luck, don't blame me for being merciless. Tao Lord Lan Yu slapped her storage bag and threw a pink spirit crane into the air that turned into a streak of light. A gigantic crane appeared and cried into the skies. A crisp and clear crane cry echoed through Thousand Crane Sect. Lang Ro's expression changed. This was a signal for the Dharma characteristic experts to gather. Apart from those in seclusion, everyone else could see it. Bang! 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 Powerful auras burst forth from all corners of Thousand Cranes Sect as figures rushed towards this area. Before long, dozens of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords descended and surrounded the mystic courtyard with unfriendly expressions. The immense pressure reverberated through the entire courtyard, and many nascent souls present no longer dared to speak. Who would have thought that the Thousand Crane Tea Party would end up in such a situation where Dharma characteristic experts were at odds? Right now, both parties were ready to fight at any moment. Girl, what are you doing? Elder Gu glared angrily and hollered in rage as he blew his beard. How dare you try to attack us? Shangguan Zi, why aren't you coming out?
Elder Gu's eyes lit up and his walking stick landed heavily on the ground.
Bang! Boom! Boom! Endless lights burst forth from every corner of Thousand Cranes Sect and shot into the skies. The terrain of the sect was changing. Light of formation patterns. Su Zimo muttered softly. That was the sign of a massive formation being activated. Tao Lord Lan Yu's expression changed starkly as she exclaimed, the Sect Protection Formation. Thousand Cranes Sect's Sect Protection Formation would definitely not be activated unless it was absolutely necessary. She had not expected that this unassuming old man before her would be able to activate Thousand Cranes Sect's Sect Protection Formation through thin air. I was the one who set up Thousand Cranes Sect's Sect Protection Formation personally. How dare you attempt to lay your hands on me today, girl? Elder Gu hollered with a booming voice.
Dozens of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords of Thousand Cranes Sect stood in midair and exchanged glances, looking hesitant. From the looks of it, the old man had a powerful background and none of them dared to attack rashly.
Once the Sect Protection Formation was activated, even those in seclusion would be alarmed. Boom! Right then, a loud bang sounded from the depths of Thousand Cranes Sect. A powerful aura burst forth. Against that aura, all the Dharma characteristic Tao Lords present were as insignificant as ants. Conjoint body mighty figure. Only someone at the conjoint body realm could release such a terrifying aura. Who's calling me?
In the blink of an eye, a figure arrived above the mystic courtyard, as though it was one with the world. No one could figure out how the person arrived. It was as though she had appeared out of thin air.
It was a woman who looked even younger than Tao Lord Lan Yu. Her black hair fluttered and she was extremely beautiful.
Her skin was fair and her eyes were filled with a mighty aura of indifference.
Master!
When Tao Lord Lan Yu saw that person, her expression changed and she bowed hurriedly with her head lowered, her eyes filled with endless fear.
Hee hee, Shangguan, you're still so young. Elder Gu gave a strange chuckle. Shangguan Zi shifted her gaze. When she saw Elder Gu, she smiled and said, after crossing that step, my lifespan was extended so I naturally seem much younger now. At that point, the crowd no longer had any doubts. The newcomer was a conjoint body mighty figure. Shangguan Zi landed in the courtyard and looked at the two old men. She scolded them jokingly. Are you two old fools tired of living? Why did you come over to my place to create such a huge ruckus? Although Shangguan Zi was cursing, her eyes revealed the joy of reuniting with old friends. Really, if you guys wanted to meet me, all you had to do was inform Lan Yu. Why go to the extent of activating the Sect Protection Formation? Shangguan Zi shook her head helplessly. Chapter 969. Tea served by the Sect Master. Chapter 969. Tea served by the Sect Master. Upon hearing that, Tao Lord Lan Yu panicked. Hee hee, inform Lan Yu? Elder Gu sneered, if she doesn't remove our heads, we'll be thanking the gods. Shangguan, that's quite a poor candidate to be a Sect Master you've got there. Elder Gu pouted. Shangguan Zi's expression changed slightly. She narrowed his eyes and surveyed her surroundings. Gradually, she noticed something unusual. When she saw the dozens of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords around her, her first assumption was that these cultivators of the sect had only rushed over because they were alarmed by the Sect Protection Formation. But now, it seemed like there was more to it. Tao Lord Lan Yu's mind raced as she forced a smile. Master, I don't know who those two seniors were. Shut up. Shangguan Zi interrupted Dao Lord Lan Yu, and turned to look at the two Dharma characteristic Dao Lords behind her. She said indifferently, "Both of you, tell me everything that happened earlier." The two Dharma characteristic Dao Lords looked hesitant as they exchanged glances, seemingly in a dilemma. Shangguan Zi said slowly, "If you hide anything, the sect will punish you accordingly." Both of their hearts skipped a beat. Without hesitation, they recounted everything that happened at the Thousand Crane Tea Party without missing any details. At first, Shangguan Zi even hummed twice. Towards the end, she was already silent and expressionless. However, her gaze turned increasingly cold and Dao Lord Lan Yu who was standing beside her felt her heart skip a beat. This was the first time Dao Lord Scarlet Star, Elder Gu and Elder Gu had heard about everything that happened at the tea party as well, and they were extremely excited. The two old men looked at Su Zimo, and nodded from time to time without concealing the admiration in their eyes. Su Zimo lamented internally, judging from the backgrounds of those two old men, they must be experts from thousands of years ago. It's unlikely that Dao Lord Scarlet Star could have summoned them given his status. Could it be? Before long, the two Dharma characteristic Dao Lords recounted the many conflicts that happened during the tea party. After hearing that, Shangguan Zi remained silent for a long time. The atmosphere was extremely tense, like the calm before a storm. "Lan Yu." After a while, Shangguan Zi sighed and said word by word coldly, "How dare you?" Dao Lord Lan Yu's heart skipped a beat as she knelt on the ground with a thud. With a horrified expression she said hurriedly, "Master, let me explain." Shangguan Zi said, "The purpose of the Thousand Crane Tea Party is to invite nascent Soul Realm paragons from Tianhuang mainland and foster a good relationship with many sections. The only thing Thousand Crane Sect has to do is to be fair. Ask yourself honestly, were your actions even fair?" Dao Lord Lan Yu shuddered and was rendered speechless. Shangguan Zi continued, "You sacrificed your disciple and arranged a marriage with Chaos Essence Sect's cultivators to obtain Chaos Essence Sect's support. How can you do something like that? You've really done Thousand Crane Sect proud, eh?" "There's more." Shangguan Zi pointed at Su Zimo and shouted, "I don't care if this child is a cultivator or a fiend demon. If Thousand Crane Sect is indebted to him, we can't lay our hands on him. But, what were you doing?" I only wanted him to stay in the sect as a guest." Dao Lord Lan Yu's voice trembled with fear. "Piak." Shangguan Zi waved her hand and slapped Dao Lord Lan Yu heavily on the cheek, interrupting the latter. No matter what, Dao Lord Lan Yu was a sect master. Now that she was punished in such a manner in front of everybody, her reputation in the cultivation world in the future will definitely be tarnished. None of the cultivators present pitied her. Chaos Essence Sect and Sword Sect cultivators blamed her for not attacking in time to suppress Su Zimo. Little Fatty, Ji Chengtian and the others who were on Su Zimo's side would definitely not pity her. Only Lang Ro could not bear it and took half a step forward. She raised her hands slightly, wanting to say something but stopped. Shangguan Zi shook her head and said, "How dare you still try to play games in front of me? It seems like I was wrong about you back then." "Calm down, Shangguan." Elder Gu said, "We're here because we have good news for you." Dao Lord Scarlet Star hurried forward and handed over a letter, saying softly, "This is personally written by a senior of 100 Refinement Sect." "Indeed." Su Zimo muttered to himself internally. As expected, this letter should have been written by Dao Lord Extreme Fire. The two old men before him should have been invited by Dao Lord Extreme Fire as well. To Shangguan Zi only. Shangguan Zi took it casually and her gaze froze when she saw the words on it. This handwriting. Her palm trembled slightly. She seemed to have thought of something and her heart wavered. She opened the letter hurriedly and focused. The first line of the letter read, "Shangguan, I'm still alive and have returned." Upon seeing that, Shangguan Zi's eyes welled up and her vision blurred. If not for the fact that there were too many cultivators present, she would have lost control of her emotions and burst into tears. Many cultivators noticed Shangguan Zi's emotional fluctuation. The crowd could not imagine what was written on the letter that could make a conjoint body mighty figure lose control of her emotions. Is this true? Shangguan Zi turned to look at Elder Gu and Old Man Gu, still unsure. The two old men nodded. Taking a deep breath,
Shangguan Zi composed herself and read through the entire letter before putting it away carefully, as if it was something extremely precious.
Shangguan Zi turned to look at Su Zimo with a warm gaze.
There was no hint of arrogance or dominance from a conjoined body mighty figure as she asked gently, "You're Su Zimo?"
"I'm Su Zimo. Greetings, Senior." Su Zimo hurried forward and bowed.
"Your master and I are?"
"Yes, we're good friends. There's no need for formalities."
Shangguan Zi smiled and waved her sleeves gently, helping Su Zimo up. Shangguan Zi said, "I heard about what happened in Myriad Phenomenon City from your master.
Thank you for helping us.
Countless paragons were spared and we managed to protect the last bit of dignity of the human race."
The cultivators were moved.
This was a conjoined body mighty figure. Normally, nobody could even catch sight of them. But now, this conjoined body mighty figure was thanking a nascent soul. It could be seen that the battle 100 years ago was absolutely true. "From the start of the Tea Party till now, no one has dared to question your title as the #1 perfected lord," Shangguan Zi said, "only you are qualified to drink this supreme-grade mystic tea." After saying that, Shangguan Zi waved her hand gently and the remaining tender leaf on the top of the mystic tea tree fell into the teacup. Thereafter, she injected boiling spring water and a steaming cup of fragrant tea was ready.
Lan Yu served the tea.
Shangguan Zi placed the teacup on Dao Lord Lan Yu's palm and said calmly. At that moment, Dao Lord Lan Yu's expression was extremely terrible. As the sect master of Thousand Crane Sect, she now had to offer tea to a nascent soul. This was a humiliation that she would never forget for the rest of her life.
The crowd was envious.
A conjoined body mighty figure making tea and a sect master serving it. Who could enjoy such treatment? Dao Lord Lan Yu did not dare to disobey and received the teacup respectfully with both hands. She walked to Su Zimo expressionlessly and said through gritted teeth, "Please."
"Thank you, Sect Master."
Smiling gently, Su Zimo took the teacup and drank it. The moment Su Zimo raised his head to drink his tea, a hint of viciousness flashed through the depths of Dao Lord Lan Yu's eyes before vanishing swiftly.
Chapter 970, Breakthrough. Chapter 970. Breakthrough.
There was no bitterness in the supreme-grade mystic tea when it entered his stomach. It carried a faint sweet fragrance and turned into a warm current that flowed through his limbs and bones before fusing into his body. Finally, a ball of spirit chi gathered from the tea and surged into his spirit platform, breaking through Su Zimo's consciousness and engulfing his two essence spirits. Instinctively, Su Zimo closed his eyes and sat on the ground. The spirit chi nourished the two essence spirits, cleansing the impurities in the black-haired essence spirit and refining the yin chi in the scarlet-haired yin spirit. Under the nourishment of the ball of spirit chi, the two essence spirits became increasingly condensed and pure, advancing towards the void reversion realm. Before leaving Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had already cultivated his two essence spirits to the peak of late-stage nascent soul realm with the help of the 1,000-year blood sea. Right now, he was already on the brink of a breakthrough after fighting against many nascent soul paragons. With the help of the supreme-grade mystic tea, there were almost no obstacles and he broke through in less than half an hour.
Everything happened naturally.
Ah! Su Zimo opened his eyes and let out a long howl into the skies with a divine glow. Perfected nascent soul. In 100 years, he had advanced from golden core to perfected nascent soul realm. That was a terrifying speed. Throughout history, there were not many cultivators who could reach that speed. 140-year-old nascent soul. Although he did not look young, Su Zimo was equivalent to a teenager if he was compared to a mortal with 100 years of lifespan.
Many cultivators were shocked.
Everyone did not know that Su Zimo was cultivating two great essence spirits at the same time and was even using them to nurture the creation Green Lotus. Otherwise, he might have already entered the void reversion realm. Now that his essence spirit was at the perfected stage, Su Zimo could clearly sense that the Dharmic powers that he could control were much stronger. Furthermore, he could vaguely sense the barrier of the void reversion realm. The difference between perfected nascent soul and the void reversion realm was only a single step. However, that single step stumped countless cultivators. In fact, some cultivators were unable to break through this barrier and enter the void reversion realm for the rest of their lives. Breaking through a major cultivation realm was the most difficult. It was perfectly normal for people to cultivate several hundred years to attempt to break through. For example, perfected Lord Panglan, who died in Su Zimo's hands earlier on, only managed to take half a step forward after cultivating for hundreds of years and had yet to truly break through to Void Reversion realm.
Congratulations. Shangguan Zi smiled slightly. Thank you, Senior. Su Zimo hurriedly stood up and bowed.
Shangguan Zi nodded and turned to look at Lord Taoist Lan Yu, saying indifferently, Lan Yu, you are to blame for the current state of the Thousand Crane Tea Party.
This is unforgivable. Tao Lord Lan Yu's heart skipped a beat.
Shangguan Zi's tone was extremely stern. It was clear that she was truly enraged and this matter would not end peacefully. Master, I know my mistake now. Tao Lord Lan Yu knelt on the ground hurriedly and apologized loudly with a terrified expression. Shangguan Zi shook her head and said sternly, as a sect master, you're unjust and ungrateful. If I hadn't come out of seclusion in time, I can't imagine how much trouble you would have caused or how badly the sect would have been implicated because of your actions. Tao Lord Lan Yu sprawled on the ground, trembling slightly and not daring to speak. Lan Yu, from this day forth, you are no longer the sect master of Thousand Crane Sect.
Shangguan Zi said slowly.
Yes, master. Tao Lord Lan Yu did not dare to question as she lowered her head and replied softly. Shangguan Zi stood still for a moment before she took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, according to the rules of the sect, you committed an unforgivable crime and should be executed. Tao Lord Lan Yu shuddered in fright. Pausing for a moment, Shangguan Zi continued, however, on account of the fact that you've been under my tutelage for so many years, I'll just cripple your cultivation today and kick you out of the sect. Go and lead a peaceful life as a mortal.
The cultivators were moved.
In the blink of an eye, the high and mighty sect master who was insufferably arrogant earlier on had fallen to the mortal realm. Everyone knew that the punishment was not severe at all. If Shangguan Zi had not come out of seclusion, Tao Lord Lan Yu would have attacked Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the other two and detained Su Zimo. That would have been a calamity and Thousand Crane Sect would have been doomed. Master, I really know my mistake now. Tao Lord Lan Yu was truly frightened.
She crawled to Shangguan Zi's feet and cried.
Grandmaster, please show mercy. Lung Ro could not bear to see Tao Lord Lan Yu in such a state and knelt down as well to plead for mercy. No matter what, Tao Lord Lan Yu was her master at the end of the day. Shangguan Zi turned to look at Lang Ro and asked, despite the way she treated you, you're pleading for mercy for her sake. Please show mercy, Grandmaster. Lang Ro pursed her lips and replied. Shangguan Zi was silent for a moment before nodding.
All right, I'll give you another chance. However, you won't be able to escape punishment.
Take Lan Yu to the disciplinary hall and subject her to the 9 core punishments.
Thank you, Master.
Thank you for your kindness. Tao Lord Lan Yu hurriedly kowtowed as though she was pardoned. Although she was punished, she could at least preserve her cultivation and have a chance to make a comeback. 2 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords stood out and helped Tao Lord Lan Yu up, heading towards the depths of Thousand Crane Sect.
Shangguan Zi turned to look at Lang Ro.
The coldness in her eyes dissipated a lot as she said, Your name is Lang Ro, right? Join me from now on.
Lang Ro was slightly stunned.
Little Fatty beamed and pushed Lang Ro hurriedly, whispering, What are you waiting for? Hurry and acknowledge your master.
The crowd was envious.
This was a tremendous opportunity. To be taken in by a conjoint body as a disciple personally meant that not only would Lang Ro's strength increase, her status in Thousand Crane Sect in the future would soar as well.
Lang Ro knelt down and kowtowed. Greetings, Master.
Su Zimo was happy for Lang Ro when he saw that. It was already extremely benevolent of Lang Ro to stand out and plead for Tao Lord Lan Yu. Now that Senior Shangguan was willing to take her in as a disciple, it was naturally her fate and fortune.
The tea party continued.
Many cultivators entered the fray to fight for the ordinary mystic tea. However, compared to the shocking battle earlier on, the fight between these nascent soul paragons seemed much more ordinary. With a conjoint body mighty figure like Shangguan Zi around, the tea party went smoothly. By the time night fell, it was already over. Some cultivators bid farewell that night. Some cultivators rested for the night in Thousand Crane Sect. Everyone knew that today's battle was merely the beginning. The true storm was still coming. Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglan, and many void reversions of the immortal sects died in the hands of Su Zimo. The immortal sects were not going to let this go. Furthermore, Su Zimo slaughtered Yi Tiancheng and declared war upon Di Yin after his domineering return. How would Di Yin respond to that? If a few immortal sects were to attack at the same time, would 100 Refinement Sect be able to protect Su Zimo? Additionally, at the end of the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, a letter caused a conjoint body mighty figure of 1,000 Crane Sect to appear and almost reverse the entire situation, even causing a sect master to fall from grace. Who did this letter come from? Chapter 971. Body Reconstruction. Chapter 971. Body Reconstruction. The tea party ended and everyone dispersed. Dao Lord Scarlet Star said to Su Zimo, Uncle Master, Grandmaster wants you to hurry back. Yes. Su Zimo nodded. The reason why there was such a huge commotion was because Dao Lord Extreme Fire was worried about his safety. Su Zimo said, let's head back tonight then. Little Fatty, Lang Ro and the others were naturally reluctant to part with Su Zimo after not seeing him for 100 years. After the tea party, they had nothing else to do, so they followed Su Zimo to 100 Refinement Sect. Apart from them, there were also Shangguan Zi, Elder Gu and Old Man Gu. Shangguan Zi summoned a white cloud and led everyone towards 100 Refinement Sect at full speed. When Dao Being Yu Ding led everyone from 100 Refinement Sect to 1,000 Crane Sect, they walked for almost half a day. But now, a conjoint body led all the cultivators at full speed and arrived at 100 Refinement Sect in less than 10 minutes. This speed was truly frightening. Many of the 100 Refinement Sect cultivators returned to the sect in high spirits, wishing for nothing more than to recount the events of the 1,000 Crane Tea Party throughout the sect. Su Zimo brought Lang Ro and the others back to his cave abode. Everyone naturally had a lot to say after not seeing each other for 100 years. That was even more likely for Shangguan Zi, Elder Gu and Old Man Gu, who had not seen each other for 5,000 years. After Shangguan Zi and the others arrived at 100 Refinement Sect, they headed straight for the 100 Refinement Hall with excited expressions. Su Zimo, Lang Ro, Little Fatty and the others spent the entire night talking about everything that had happened to them for the past 100 years. The laughter in the cave abode never stopped. Little Fatty bounced around excitedly the entire night. Everyone seemed to have returned to the past when they were in ethereal peak. Morning. Su Zimo and the others did not sleep the entire night. However, they were still full of energy and were in high spirits. Before long, Dao Lord Scarlet Star came to visit and asked Su Zimo to head to the 100 Refinement Hall to meet Dao Lord Extreme Fire. Without hesitation, Su Zimo followed Dao Lord Scarlet Star to the main hall. Dao Lord Scarlet Star stood guard outside while Su Zimo entered alone. Deep in the hall, it was stuffy. After passing through a long corridor, he arrived at the innermost area and everything opened up before him. It was a secret chamber with a huge dome. In the secret chamber, a ball of scorching flames spewed continuously from the ground on the left. On the right, there was a gigantic spirit pool with countless spirit herbs and plants rising and falling. Immortal Spirit Flower, Azure Sunbranch, Dragon Phoenix Lotus, Shen Yuan Grass, 10,000-year blood ginseng. It was filled with vitality and spirit chi that was dense and gave off a rich aura of life. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. These spirit herbs and elixirs were rare even on ordinary days. Only a sect like 100 Refinement Sect with an immense foundation and strength could gather so many of them. Dao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit stood in midair not far away. I've heard about what happened at the tea party. As for what happens next, I'll handle it. You don't have to worry. Dao Lord Extreme Fire consoled Su Zimo. I called you here today because I want you to witness the entire process of forging the bones and body. Dao Lord Extreme Fire continued. Back then, I merely explained it to you. I'm sure there are many things that you might not understand. Today, I'll demonstrate it once more. You have to remember every single detail. Su Zimo nodded. In truth, his current body could be said to be perfect and earth-shaking. He cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and fused with the bloodline of the dragon race. His blood chi was terrifying. Even the physique and bloodline of the primordial 9 races could not compare to him.
Su Zimo did not know how to exchange a body at all. Given his current physique, he felt that there was no need to either. However, he had a feeling that Tao Lord Extreme Fire was implying something and focused his attention. This flame is the Earth Core Fire. It's extremely hot and can melt many natural materials. Tao Lord Extreme Fire explained to Su Zimo as he demonstrated. Let's fuse the 9 fire elemental materials together first. Tao Lord Extreme Fire placed the weapon tripod on the Earth Core Fire and placed the Scarlet Phoenix Blood Ore, Sunstone, Lava Crystal, Thousand Demon Bloodstone, Nirvana Stone and other top-tier materials into the weapon tripod before slowly melting them. Thereafter, he used the liquid inside to forge the bones he needed. It was a long and complicated process. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was extremely patient as he explained while tempering and explaining every single detail. Su Zimo memorized everything. It took a full 3 days before a skeleton was created. Every single section of the skeleton had a natural fire elemental pattern that emitted a scorching heat. The skeleton could be said to be perfect and every single part of it was carved with exquisite jade bracelets. It was a godly work of art that was truly admirable. With that skeleton, the power of fire-based Dharmic arts would definitely increase. Tao Lord Extreme Fire consumed a lot of energy after completing the bone forging process. He continued explaining things to Su Zimo while resting. Next is the process of body tempering. Tao Lord Extreme Fire pointed to the spirit pool not far away. This spirit pool contains all spirit herbs and elixirs that can provide life essence. By using this skeleton to nourish one's bloodline, one can nurture their organs and other organs in this spirit pool. This process is rather long, even longer than bone forging. Tao Lord Extreme Fire took a deep breath and pointed to a brand new storage bag beside him. Keep this storage bag. Picking up the storage bag, Su Zimo took a look and his heart skipped a beat. The storage bag contained a large amount of spirit herbs and elixirs that were identical to the ones in the spirit pool. Not only that, there were also some top-grade bone tempering ores in his storage bag. This. Su Zimo looked at Tao Lord Extreme Fire. This gift was way too precious. Even if he sold all the treasures of Ethereal Peak, they would not be as valuable as this small storage bag. I specially instructed 100 Refinement Sect to collect 2 sets of spirit herbs and elixirs when they were gathering the materials. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said meaningfully, "Take it. You might need it in the future." Su Zimo nodded and put away the storage bag. Alright, body tempering comes after bone forging. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit flickered and arrived at the glabella of the skeleton's head. He controlled the skeleton to enter the spirit pool and sit down cross-D. Swoosh! An endless stream of life essence surged into the scarlet skeleton. At the same time, Tao Lord Extreme Fire controlled his Dharmic powers with his essence spirit and vibrated his bones continuously. Splash! The sound of bone marrow flowing could be heard from his bones. Marrow cleansing. Su Zimo was extremely familiar with that scene. There was the marrow cleansing section in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Using the sound of tigers and leopards, one can purify the marrow and create a new bloodline to achieve the goal of blood purification. Gradually, pink flesh that was as thin as a cicada's wings appeared on the scarlet skeleton. As time passed by, the flesh on his bones gradually filled up. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's outline gradually became clearer. The secret chamber was silent. At that moment, the cultivation world of the Middle Continent was in an uproar as news after news spread one after another, creating huge waves. Chapter 972, Rising Storm. Chapter 972, Rising Storm. The top of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago, Su Zimo, has returned. During the Thousand Crane Tea Party, Su Zimo killed Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Pang Lan and defeated many nascent soul paragons. Even void reversions were defeated by him, and he was conferred as the #1 perfected lord. After not seeing him for 100 years, this monster incarnate is even more terrifying than before. He even declared war on Di'in at the tea party. Of the 2 paragons of Chaos Essence Sect, only one remains. The news spread rapidly in the cultivation world of the Middle Continent and caused a huge stir. At that moment,
Cultivators and factions from all over the Middle Continent were discussing this matter. This man has been dormant for 100 years and yet, he has not changed his character after his return. He offended so many factions the moment he appeared. I don't think he's going to live much longer. Not necessarily. I heard that 100 Refinement Sect has clearly expressed their intention to protect this person. Fufu, 100 Refinement Sect is declining day by day and can no longer protect itself. Who else can it protect? That's right. If a few super sects were to exert pressure at the same time, 100 Refinement Sect would have to submit as well. Otherwise, 100 Refinement Sect might be annihilated. Not necessarily. I've heard some news. I heard that a Dharma characteristic expert who has been missing for thousands of years has returned and is reconstructing his body. What's the use of Dharma characteristic experts for something as important as the survival of a sect? Someone scoffed in disdain. This Dharma characteristic expert is extraordinary. I heard he's Tao Lord Extreme Fire from 5,000 years ago. Who is Tao Lord Extreme Fire? I've never heard of him. It's him. The number one of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. He's still alive. News of what happened at the Thousand Crane Tea Party spread, and it was not difficult to deduce the truth with some of the details. After all, there were very few people who could invite two elders of ancient Array Sect and Elixir Yang Sect, who had been reclusive for thousands of years, and a conjoint body mighty figure of Thousand Crane Sect with just a single letter. At the same time in Sword Sect. Immortal Sword Tao Residence. After Tao Lord Cloud Rain and Fairy Snowdrift's clones were destroyed in Thousand Demon Valley, they stayed here for more than 3 months to exchange their Tao technique knowledge with Tao Lord Immortal Sword. In the past few days, the two of them had intended to leave. However, news arrived one after another at Sword Sect and their schedule was temporarily set aside. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly with a cold expression, "If Tao Lord Extreme Fire isn't dead, he should be the one who fought me in Thousand Demon Valley." No wonder. Tao Lord Cloud Rain said, "Back when your essence spirits were fighting, that person released the Soaring Serpent Flame Deity Essence Spirit secret skill." It's not right. Fairy Snowdrift shook her head. I heard that Tao Lord Extreme Fire is reconstructing his body. There's no way he could be the person we met back then who possessed an intact flesh body. This doesn't make sense. If there was someone else present, that would explain everything. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's gaze flickered as he remarked faintly. What do you mean by that? Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain looked over. Su Zimo. A name popped out from the gaps between Tao Lord Immortal Sword's teeth. Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain frowned. The number one perfected lord with the greatest reputation recently. Tao Lord Cloud Rain frowned. The timing of his return and Extreme Fire's return is indeed a coincidence. However, what has he got to do with this? Tao Lord Immortal Sword narrowed his eyes and said sternly previously, "The news from our Sword Sect disciples stated that the monster incarnate, Su Zimo, has returned and mastered an extremely terrifying sword art. Even our top paragons of Sword Sect such as Jian Wuzong and Hang Qiuyu were nearly killed by that sword art." When Tao Lord Immortal Sword saw that the two of them were still confused, he pondered for a moment before saying in a deep voice, "Since things have come to this, there are some things I won't hide anymore. Back then, I asked the both of you to help me fight for the treasure in Thousand Demon Valley. That was actually a sword art. It was one of the 3 ancient sword arts." Ah! Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain exclaimed in shock. The 3 ancient sword arts were way too famous. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said hatefully, "As I expected, this sword art should have fallen into Su Zimo's hands." I've got it. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was enlightened. You're saying that the one who fought us in Thousand Demon Valley was actually Su Zimo's body and Tao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit. That's right. Tao Lord Immortal Sword nodded. My demon ceiling diagram was not suppressed by that person's Dharmic powers. Instead, it was suppressed by the aura of Su Zimo's divine phoenix bone, and that was why it was taken away so easily. This junior sure has guts. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression was cold, and he did not conceal the killing intent in his eyes. His clone was destroyed and he returned empty-handed. He even gave up many treasures just to invite Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain. All the grievances that he had accumulated over the past few days were directed towards Su Zimo. Why? Are you prepared to settle scores with that lad?
Tao Lord Cloud Rain raised his brow and asked with a fake smile. Tao Lord Immortal Sword harumphed coldly. I've said it before. If I find out who this person is, I'll kill him no matter what. Then you have to hurry and get moving. Tao Lord Cloud Rain smiled gently. After the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, that lad has truly caused a huge calamity. Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglan and many void reversions are dead. Those immortal sects must have made a move. Tao Lord Extreme Fire, 100 Refinement Sect. Tao Lord Immortal Sword sneered. I'm going to pay a personal visit and see how 100 Refinement Sect reacts. I don't believe that they can withstand the pressure of so many super sects. Brother Cloud Rain, why don't you accompany me? Tao Lord Immortal Sword turned and asked with a sincere expression. Tao Lord Cloud Rain knew that Tao Lord Immortal Sword was only inviting him because the latter wanted to borrow his influence. However, he did not decline. He was not interested in Su Zimo. However, now that 5,000 years have passed, he wanted to see how Tao Lord Extreme Fire, who was the #1 on the Dharma characteristic ranking and suppressed him back then, was doing. Snowdrift, why don't you come with us if you're free? Tao Lord Immortal Sword invited Fairy Snowdrift as well. Sure. Fairy Snowdrift nodded and said indifferently, however, I'm not heading over because I want to help you. I'm just curious about Su Zimo and Tao Lord Extreme Fire. There's no time to lose, let's move. Tao Lord Immortal Sword leaped up and headed out of the cave abode. The moment he arrived outside the cave abode, a sword beam sped over from afar and descended before Tao Lord Immortal Sword. It was a woman with a fluttering white dress and a long sword on her back. She was extremely beautiful and had a heroic aura between her brows. It was the Dharma characteristic expert of Sword Sect, Qin Pian Ran. Senior brother, Dao being Han Jian of the sect died at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Master told me to head to 100 Refinement Sect to get the culprit. Qin Pian Ran looked at Fairy Snowdrift with hostility as she spoke. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said indifferently, We're about to go together. You should come as well. Without saying anything, the four of them summoned their Dharmic weapons and sped into the distance. Before long, they disappeared above Sword Sect. At the same time, Dharma characteristic Tao Lords from Heavenly Dipper Sect, Chaos Essence Sect and Zephyr Thunder Palace appeared with murderous auras and rushed towards 100 Refinement Sect. The other sects and factions were also acting strangely. A storm was rising in the Middle Continent. Chapter 973. Arrival of Tao Lords. Chapter 973. Arrival of Tao Lords. 100 Refinement Sect. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was at the end of his forging process and was no longer in danger. The only thing he had to do was wait. Su Zimo left silently. Outside the hall, not only were Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the other 100 Refinement Sect cultivators guarding, Elder Gu had even set up an array formation personally to prevent any unforeseen circumstances. Su Zimo looked over and could not see anything. However, he could vaguely sense that there were other powerful beings in the corners of the hall. In fact, there might even be conjoint body mighty figures guarding in secret. Everyone was waiting for Tao Lord Extreme Fire to be reborn. Actually, Su Zimo had already killed a few people at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party and was prepared to leave. He did not want to implicate 100 Refinement Sect. It was the same reason why he did not return to Ethereal Peak in the past. He did not want to implicate them. However, Tao Lord Extreme Fire retained him still. Sect Master, Tao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain is here to visit. Before long, 100 Refinement Sect cultivators sent a message. Let him rest in the front hall. Tao Lord White Flames was long prepared and passed down the order. Tyrant Emperor Mountain was one of the 108 upper sects and its status in the cultivation world was beneath the 4 unorthodox groups. As the sect master of 100 Refinement Sect, he naturally wouldn't receive them personally. Fufu, looks like even some of the upper sects can't sit still and want to take advantage of the situation. Tao Lord Scarlet Star sneered. A moment later, another 100 Refinement Sect cultivator sped over and said in a deep voice, Sect Master, Tao Lord Heaven Sea of 5 Elements Sect is here to pay a visit. Yes, arrange all of them to be in the front hall. Tao Lord White Flames nodded. Not long after, Another 100 Refinement Sect cultivator came to send a message. Sect Master, Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace is here. Tao Lord White Flames, Tao Lord Scarlet Star, and the others felt their hearts skip a beat. They were finally here. The Dharma characteristics of the 9 immortal sects have arrived with hostile intentions. Sect Master, Heavenly Dipper Sect's Tao Lord Breaking Skies is here. Sect Master, Tao Lord Cloud Son of Chaos Essence Sect has arrived. Formless Monastery's Monk Kong Wen is here. Monk Liao Ming of Wisdom Monastery is here. As the master of a sect, Tao Lord White Flames was able to maintain his composure even after hearing the arrival of supersections. Sect Master, Tao Lord Immortal Sword, Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain have arrived together. Another piece of news arrived. Finally, Tao Lord White Flames' expression changed. Although the Dharma characteristics at the front were famous as well, they could not be compared to these three. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was second on the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. Fairy Snowdrift was number 1 on the Dharma characteristic ranking 2,000 years ago. Tao Lord Immortal Sword, number 1 of the previous Dharma characteristic ranking. Furthermore, the three of them were titular disciples of Cloud Rain Sect, Snowdrift Valley and Sword Sect. It's easy to explain why Tao Lord Immortal Sword is here, but why are Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain here? Tao Lord Scarlet Star frowned. Tao Lord White Flames turned to everyone and cupped his fists. I've got to deal with it. Everyone, wait here. Don't show yourself first. Wait for the news of Granduncle Master Extreme Fire's return to be released. Before Tao Lord White Flames left, he reminded Su Zimo. I'll go with you. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said as he sped to the front with Tao Lord White Flames. In the front hall. The hall was extremely spacious and was purely made of metal. It was filled with a metallic texture and looked indestructible. Many cultivators were already seated in the hall. Every single one of them had a powerful aura and a reckless might. The disciples of 100 Refinement Sect that served tea were all jittery, worried that they might offend these important figures. Nangong Ling, Lu Hanyan and Ru Xian were in the hall. The Dharma characteristic Tao Lords that arrived were already seated. The ones seated at the highest seats were Tao Lord Immortal Sword, Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Although Cloud Rain Sect was a fiend sect, none of the Dharma characteristic Tao Lords present dared to provoke Tao Lord Cloud Rain. In the cultivation world, strength reigned supreme. Since there were many Dharma characteristic Tao Lords gathered here, there were naturally exchanges of greetings. Of course, everyone knew why they were here. After exchanging pleasantries, they fell silent. All of them had dark expressions of anger. The atmosphere in the hall was a little tense. Piak! Suddenly, the heavy palm of Tao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain slammed onto the metal table with a loud bang. Ru Xian, who had just served the tea, was shocked. She could not hold the teacup properly and it fell to the ground with a loud crack, shattering into pieces. What is your 100 Refinement Sect doing? Tao Lord Red Tiger had a muscular build and had tempered his body for many years. He looked extremely tall and muscular with eyes that resembled copper bells. He glared at Ru Xian beside him and hollered with a ferocious aura. So many Dharma characteristic Tao Lords have come to visit and 100 Refinement Sect sent you brats to deal with us? Is this how 100 Refinement Sect treats its guests? Tao Lord Red Tiger's voice was like a bell, ringing in Ru Xian's ears and making her dizzy. Nangong Ling and Lu Hanyan endured their emotions and hurried forward to pull Ru Xian back. Aren't you ashamed of bullying the juniors? A cold sneer sounded from outside as Tao Lord Scarlet Star walked in. When he saw his disciple being bullied by a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, he was naturally enraged and his tone was blunt. Hee, if that's not the case, who knows how long you guys from 100 Refinement Sect will have to hide for? Tao Lord Red Tiger chuckled. Tao Lord Heaven Sea of 5 Elements Sect added in a strange tone, that's right. If 100 Refinement Sect were to cower and hide, there's nothing we can do. Heaven Sea, Red Tiger, you're on 100 Refinement Sect's grounds. Mind your words. Tao Lord White Flame said coldly. How impressive. A cold glint flickered in Tao Lord Firecloud's eyes as he said slowly,
No wonder 100 Refinement Sect dared to take in a fiend demon despite the universal condemnation.
Fellow Taoist Fire Cloud, what are you talking about? Tao Lord White Flames asked indifferently.
Stop pretending. Heavenly Dipper Sect's Tao Lord Breaking Skies rose slowly and said, White Flames, hand over Su Zimo and 100 Refinement Sect might be able to retain your status as one of the 4 unorthodox groups.
Otherwise, 100 Refinement Sect is about to be destroyed. Amitba.
Formless Monastery's Kongwen pressed his palms together and lowered his gaze, saying softly, Patron White Flames, we Buddhists have always been unwilling to fight with other. However, that Su Zimo is definitely not a good person. He massacred the paragons of the human race wantonly and even took the supreme treasure of the Buddhist sect, the creation Green Lotus, for himself.
He deserves to die.
Tao Lord White Flames sneered, Monk Kongwen, aren't you being unreasonable? Su Zimo has obtained the recognition of Human Emperor and Fairy Ling Long in Myriad Phenomenon City. To be able to resolve the catastrophe of the Paragons single-handedly, he's definitely a human. Furthermore, the creation Green Lotus is a treasure given to him by Enigma Palace. What has it got to do with the Buddhist sects?
White Flames. Suddenly, Tao Lord Immortal Sword spoke. Instantly, the hall fell silent.
Nobody dared to underestimate this #1 Tao Lord of the Dharma characteristic ranking.
Hand him over.
100 Refinement Sect can't protect him. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly, in other words, I'm going to barge into 100 Refinement Sect right now to take him away.
Who would dare to stop me? Who can stop me?
His words were extremely domineering, but nobody dared to question him. Given Tao Lord Immortal Sword's combat strength, he could probably fight against conjoint body mighty figures. If Tao Lord Cloud Rain and Fairy Snowdrift were to join forces with him, their combat strength would be terrifying. Even if 100 Refinement Sect could withstand it, they would suffer immense losses. Furthermore, Tao Lord Immortal Sword was a titular disciple of Sword Sect and the #1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. 100 Refinement Sect would not dare to kill him. If you dare to barge into 100 Refinement Sect, I'll kill you. Right then, a cold and powerful voice sounded from outside. Chapter 974. Extreme Fire Emerges. Chapter 974. Extreme Fire Emerges. There were not many cultivators in the cultivation world who would dare to speak to Tao Lord Immortal Sword in that tone. This was the #1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking and a titular disciple. That reputation meant that Tao Lord Immortal Sword was an existence that could sweep through all beings of the same level and fight against ordinary conjoint body mighty figures. Above conjoint body mighty figures were Mahayana patriarchs. Mahayana realm experts would almost never appear in Tianhuang mainland unless something major happened. Therefore, conjoint body mighty figures included, not many people would dare to claim that they could kill Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Furthermore, he was backed by Sword Sect. Throughout history, some immortal sects were destroyed, some rose and some declined. However, Sword Sect stood strong and its strength was always ranked in the top 3. In other words, who would dare to kill him? Tao Lord Immortal Sword's gaze turned cold. Everyone turned to look. Outside the main hall, 2 people strolled in. The leader wore a long fiery red Taoist robe and seemed to be burning with flames. His black hair draped over his shoulders and he had 3 long whiskers. His face was rosy and his eyes were bright, exuding a violent and blazing aura. The temperature of the entire hall rose rapidly after that person entered. There were more than 10 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords in the hall with mixed auras and unrestrained might. However, after this person entered, the mixed auras and pressure of many Tao Lords seemed to be incinerated into nothingness instantly. His aura was even more domineering than his words. Extreme Fire, you're indeed still alive. Tao Lord Cloud Rain looked at that person and said slowly with bright eyes. The person smiled indifferently and surveyed his surroundings before saying slowly, I'm Extreme Fire. Everyone, you've come from afar. The journey must have been tough on you. Tao Lord Extreme Fire. All the cultivators present were shocked when they heard that name. Many gazes landed on Tao Lord Extreme Fire as they sized up this expert from 5,000 years ago. Dao Lord Immortal Sword looked at Dao Lord Extreme Fire expressionlessly as streaks of sword light flashed through his eyes before vanishing. Grandmaster. When Dao Lord Scarlet Star saw Dao Lord Extreme Fire return unharmed after reconstructing his body, he was delighted and excited. Dao Lord Extreme Fire was exactly the same as the way he had remembered his Grandmaster to be. After 5,000 years, time seemed to have not left a single mark on Dao Lord Extreme Fire. Furthermore, Dao Lord Extreme Fire looked even scarier than he was 5,000 years ago. Everyone turned to look at the cultivator behind Dao Lord Extreme Fire. It was a nascent soul. He wore green robes and had a refined appearance. His eyes were clear and he had one hand behind his back, looking like a frail scholar. For some unknown reason, the scholar gave off a strange feeling. Everyone took a few more glances at him before turning back to Dao Lord Extreme Fire. Dao Lord Extreme Fire led the delicate scholar behind him through the hall towards the main seat and said in a seemingly casual manner, "Everyone, you've arrived at the right moment. Let me introduce to all of you, this is my disciple, Su Zimo." The Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present were shocked. Su Zimo. To a certain extent, that name shocked many Dao Lords even more. The top of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago. He defeated Di'in in Myriad Phenomenon City, massacred 2 different foreign races and was invincible among his peers. After laying dormant for 100 years, he returned in a domineering manner and killed many paragons such as Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Pang Lan. Even void reversions were not his match and he was conferred the title of No. 1 perfected lord at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. This person had risen way too quickly. Nobody knew what level this person would reach in another 100 years. If Dao Lord Extreme Fire had not said it personally, none of the cultivators present would have imagined that the scholarly man before them was the infamous No. 1 perfected lord. Was this scholar a demon? The gazes of many Dao Lords landed on Su Zimo once more as they surveyed him. Everyone frowned slightly. They could not sense any aura of the demon race from Su Zimo. Or rather, even the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present could not see through Su Zimo. Naturally, the reason why the Dao Lords were shocked was not because they were fearful of Su Zimo's strength. It was because Su Zimo was a huge treasure in their eyes. Nominally, many immortal sects came to seek revenge under the guise of slaying demons. However, in reality, many of the Dao Lords were more concerned about how to split the treasures on Su Zimo. Dao Lord Immortal Sword was thinking about the heaven-slaying sword art. The 2 Buddhist monks were concerned about the creation Green Lotus and lost secret skills such as the Daming True Sutra. Dao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace wanted to snatch the Purple Thunder Manual from Su Zimo. There was also the legendary Divine Phoenix Bone. "You're Su Zimo?" Dao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain grinned and without any warning, he suddenly attacked and roared, "Since you dare to cripple a paragon of Tyrant Emperor Mountain, I'll cripple you." Among the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present, only Dao Lord Cloud Rain came from the same generation as Dao Lord Extreme Fire. The others did not have a strong impression of Dao Lord Extreme Fire, and naturally would not feel much fear. Su Zimo had merely gone missing for 100 years before countless paragons after him underestimated and questioned him. What more, Dao Lord Extreme Fire had gone missing for 5,000 years. Of course, all the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present were monsters that had cultivated for thousands of years. None of them were fools. Although Dao Lord Red Tiger seemed reckless and ignored Dao Lord Extreme Fire, he was actually testing the latter's attitude. If Dao Lord Extreme Fire had a firm attitude and attacked decisively, he would be able to test Dao Lord Extreme Fire's strength through that single clash. Swoosh! Dao Lord Red Tiger's fist carried a suffocating might as Dharmic power surged forth. Dao Lord Extreme Fire turned slightly and his eyes seemed to be blazing with flames. He stopped in his tracks and waved his sleeves. It filled with boundless Dharmic powers and surged viciously towards Dao Lord Red Tiger's fist. Boom! When Dao Lord Red Tiger's fist collided with the seemingly soft Taoist robe, an earth-shaking boom sounded. Dao Lord Red Tiger's expression changed. Even though it was just a simple clash, he could already tell that Dao Lord Extreme Fire's strength was far above him. Foo such strong methods. You truly live up to your reputation. Dao Lord Red Tiger chuckled dryly and wanted to retreat. You still want to leave?
Tao Lord Extreme Fire sneered. Suddenly, a gigantic palm extended from beneath his wide sleeves and gripped Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist. Tao Lord Red Tiger's heart sank. He realized that he could no longer escape. Tyrant Emperor Mountain specialized in body tempering. However, he felt waves of throbbing pain that penetrated into his bones when his fist was grabbed by Tao Lord Extreme Fire's palm. It was as though his fist would be crushed by Tao Lord Extreme Fire the next moment. Instantly, a layer of sweat appeared on Tao Lord Red Tiger's forehead. "Tao Lord, please spare, ah!" Just as Tao Lord Red Tiger was about to admit defeat, he saw another scene. His pupils constricted and he let out a tragic cry. A scarlet flame appeared in Tao Lord Extreme Fire's palm and burned his fist to ashes. The ball of flames was extremely terrifying and was spreading along his arm towards his body. Chapter 975. Burning a Dharma Characteristic. Chapter 975. Burning a Dharma Characteristic. Tao Lord Red Tiger released his aura and channeled his Dharmic powers, but he could not extinguish the flames on his arm no matter what. Instead, the scarlet flame burned brighter and brighter, almost engulfing his entire body. "Extreme fire, you!" Tao Lord Red Tiger glared with bloodshot eyes and raged. He had not expected Tao Lord Extreme Fire's reaction to be so intense when he was merely testing the waters. One of his arms was already crippled. He had not cultivated to the conjoint body realm and was unable to regenerate severed limbs yet. A crippled arm had a huge impact on Tao Lord Red Tiger, who specialized in melee combat and body tempering. His combat strength would be reduced by at least 30%. What was even more frightening was that the flame was not extinguished. Boom! Tao Lord Red Tiger's body swayed. An illusory figure rushed out from behind him. It was 50 feet tall and burst through the roof of the hall in an instant, emitting a domineering and powerful aura. Every single move it made caused the world to tremble. Heaven and Earth Dharma Characteristic. Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics were the strongest techniques of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. That was also the reason why this realm was known as the Dharma characteristic realm. Normally, no cultivator would use their Dharma characteristic unless it was at the final moment. Be it nascent souls or void reversions, the Dharmic arts they released required hand seals, incantations, or their essence spirits as mediums to draw in heaven and earth powers. However, once a cultivator reached the Dharma characteristic realm, their essence spirit would rise to another realm and they would be able to connect to heaven and earth. By fusing their bodies into heaven and earth, they achieve harmonization with Dharmic powers and synergize completely with the firmaments. From there, they conjure their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Even after cultivating to the Dharma characteristic realm, the bodies of most cultivators were still incomparable to demons. However, heaven and earth Dharma characteristics could compare to the strength of demons and they could engage in melee combat. In essence, heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were also Dharmic arts. However, the existence of heaven and earth Dharma characteristics allowed one to utilize heaven and earth powers directly without the need for Dharmic incantations or arts. They were even more direct and berserk. Of course, there were also differences in strength between heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. A single punch from a powerful Dharma characteristic was enough to overturn rivers and oceans. A single stomp was enough to shatter mountains. The larger the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, the more heaven and earth powers it could control and the stronger it was. Typically speaking, a Dharma characteristic that was 50 feet tall was already considered outstanding. If one could form a Dharma characteristic that was 60 feet tall, he would definitely be considered as a paragon. The renowned 18 meters metal body of Diamond Monastery was a 60 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. If one could condense a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 70 feet tall, they would be a peerless paragon that appeared once in 1,000 years. Boundless opportunities and massive fortunes were required for one of these paragons to be born. One could be considered as a monster incarnate if they could condense a 80 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. They could naturally sweep through anyone of the same level with ease. Almost all the number one of the Dharma characteristic rankings could condense 80 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Of course, it was said that the highest grade Dharma characteristic was 90 feet. 9 was an extreme number.
An existence that could cultivate a Dharma characteristic that was 90 feet tall was extremely rare and could be considered as a peerless monster incarnate. It was not only dependent on the cultivator's bloodline, opportunities, luck, talent, physique, or the nurturing of a sect. There were many other factors as well, and it even depended on the environment of the cultivation world. In the ancient era, in order to escape the fate of being enslaved, the human race rose against the tides. It was a glorious era that belonged to the human race. In that sort of environment, countless paragons and monster incarnates appeared. There was no lack of existences that could cultivate 90 feet Dharma characteristics. Almost all of those existences that did not die prematurely were already conferred as emperors. Without that sort of environment, without the pressure of life and death, without many powerful and terrifying enemies, it would be difficult for the human race to produce such monster incarnates. Right now, it was already quite rare for Tao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain to be able to condense a Dharma characteristic that was more than 50 feet tall.
Its might was shocking as well.
Its massive body smashed through the metal roof of the entire hall and countless debris fell one after another, creating a mess in the hall. In the hall, Nan Gongling and the other cultivators with lower cultivation retreated and hid at the side. Only the Tao Lords could maintain their composure.
Everyone frowned slightly.
For Tao Lord Red Tiger to be forced to this extent and even release his Dharma characteristic, it was clear how terrifying that scarlet flame was.
Extinguish!
After releasing his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic, the flames on Tao Lord Red Tiger's body were suppressed instantly, flickering and showing signs of extinguishing.
Humph!
Tao Lord Extreme Fire harumphed coldly and tapped his finger gently, causing a streak of red light to shoot into the flames.
Swoosh!
The flames blazed and burned the skies. The intensity of the flames engulfed Tao Lord Red Tiger's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic entirely, causing it to burn furiously with scarlet flames bursting forth from the thick smoke.
Roar!
The 50-foot-tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic struggled in the flames and waved its arms, but it could not extinguish the flames on its body.
Ah!
Tao Lord Red Tiger could not escape as well and was burned by the flames. His flesh turned into ashes and his bones turned red, almost transparent. Even his essence spirit could not escape from that blazing flame. At that moment, his essence spirit was about to be burned into nothingness.
Extreme Fire, you are ruthless!
Tao Lord Red Tiger's hoarse voice sounded from within the flames. According to his original plan, he would test the waters himself. Even if he was not a match for the other party, he would just bow his head and retreat at the most. However, he had not expected Tao Lord Extreme Fire to not give him the chance. Less than that, he had not expected Tao Lord Extreme Fire to be so strong and possess such terrifying combat strength. Even his Dharma characteristic could not defend against Tao Lord Extreme Fire's flames. Many Tao Lords looked at the bright flames in silence with different expressions. For example, Tao Lord Breaking Skies of Zephyr Thunder Palace and Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Heavenly Dipper Sect had no impression of Tao Lord Extreme Fire originally. However, everyone's impression of Tao Lord Extreme Fire gradually became clearer after this exchange. Domineering, overbearing and decisive to kill. No matter what, Tao Lord Red Tiger was a Tao Lord of Tyrant Emperor Mountain and was not a nobody. Now that Extreme Fire had killed him, that was proof of one thing. Tao Lord Extreme Fire wanted to protect Su Zimo. He did not hesitate to kill a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord or even offend an upper sect like Tyrant Emperor Mountain. At the same time, not far away from 100 Refinement Sect, cultivators with powerful auras stood in the air, looking over. They were all Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. Some of the cultivators came from one of the 108 upper sect, some were itinerant cultivators. However, there were also immortal sects such as Soaring Feather Sect. When these Dharma characteristic Tao Lords looked in the direction of 100 Refinement Sect and caught sight of that Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic that was blazing in raging flames and was howling in misery, their eyes were filled with shock. Seems like Extreme Fire has returned. From the looks of it, he's no weaker than he was back then.
Everyone, let's go.
Since Extreme Fire has returned, all of us old friends have to congratulate him no matter what. The reason why these Dharma characteristic Tao Lords did not enter 100 Refinement Sect was because they were watching. If the rumors were true that Tao Lord Extreme Fire was not dead and had returned in a domineering manner, they would pay him a congratulatory visit.
5,000 years ago, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was way too famous. Coupled with his status as a weapon refinement grandmaster, his influence was even greater than many conjoint body mighty figures.
If Extreme Fire had not returned or if his methods were far inferior compared to before, they would not appear lest they incur the wrath of Chaos Essence Sect and the other immortal sections.
In the distant horizon, a black-robed cultivator flew over with a cold expression. He carried a blood-red saber on his shoulder and his killing intent filled the air. The person looked in the direction of 100 Refinement Sect and murmured, "Thankfully, I'm not late." Chapter 976. On the Verge. Chapter 976. On the Verge. In the front hall of 100 Refinement Sect. In less than 3 breaths, the 50-foot-tall Dharma characteristic was incinerated into nothingness and its Dharmic powers dissipated. Without the support of the Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic, Tao Lord Red Tiger could not defend against the scarlet flames and was engulfed by them in the blink of an eye. Oh! He shrieked relentlessly and at the end, his voice was almost inaudible. In front of everyone, a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord was burned to ashes without a single bone remaining. Some Dharma characteristics from upper sects who were initially also raring to test the waters became silent instantly. The only Dharma characteristic Tao Lords who could maintain their composure within the hall were those from the super sects. In a certain sense, this was the first time Su Zimo had seen Tao Lord Extreme Fire attack. In the previous 2 times, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was merely an essence spirit and did not have a physical body. As such, he could not cast such Dharmic arts. Su Zimo realized that Tao Lord Extreme Fire's strength was even more terrifying than he had imagined. The 50-foot-tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic could not defend against Tao Lord Extreme Fire's Dharmic art at all. After killing a Dharma characteristic, Tao Lord Extreme Fire led Su Zimo past many other Tao Lords to the main seat before sitting down as though nothing had happened. Su Zimo followed right behind and no more Dharma characteristic Tao Lords dared to attack along the way. Well. When Tao Lord Cloud Rain saw that, he clapped his hands and praised repeatedly, saying mockingly, as expected of Extreme Fire, "You're still as mighty as ever." Tao Lord Extreme Fire said indifferently, "Even after 5,000 years, you still possess the same mannerisms. You haven't improved at all." Tao Lord Cloud Rain was not annoyed and said leisurely, "Extreme Fire, you're still at the Dharma characteristic realm after 5,000 years. You haven't improved either. Furthermore, I heard that you've even lost your body. Seems like you're not doing well, eh?" Tao Lord Extreme Fire, although your body has recovered, how much of your combat strength can you recover? Back then, you were indeed a top-notch expert. But now? Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace sneered. Under normal circumstances, once one lost their original bodies, it was difficult for them to achieve 100% compatibility with their essence spirits, be it whether they gained a new body through assimilation or reconstructed a new Dharma characteristic physical body. Therefore, one's combat strength would definitely weaken. However, the reason why Tao Lord Extreme Fire reconstructed his body personally was because he wanted to avoid that situation. Furthermore, his choice of material was all top grade. Right now, his essence spirit has already resonated with his physical body and the compatibility was close to 100%. As long as he continued cultivating for a period of time, his essence spirit and body would achieve perfect compatibility. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's gaze shifted and landed on Tao Lord Fire Cloud. As though 2 beams of flame were shot forth, he said slowly, "If you want to know, you can try it out." Tao Lord Fire Cloud's heart skipped a beat. He actually felt his heart skip a beat from Tao Lord Extreme Fire's glare. Initially, he wanted to rise but he stopped right away. He did not want to become the second Tao Lord Red Tiger. Tao Lord Extreme Fire looked at Fairy Snowdrift and asked with raised brows, "Why? Does Snowdrift Valley want to interfere as well?" "It's a misunderstanding." Fairy Snowdrift smiled indifferently. "I'm only here because of your fame. Firstly, I wanted to see for myself the Tao Lord Extreme Fire from 5,000 years ago. Secondly, I wanted to see the #1 perfected Lord of the current era." She was implying that she was in a neutral position. With that said, Fairy Snowdrift's beautiful eyes shimmered as she looked towards Su Zimo, who was behind Tao Lord Extreme Fire. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent and calm. Even in a tense situation where many Dharma characteristic Tao Lords were present and released rampant auras, he could still maintain his cool. You live up to your reputation indeed. Fairy Snowdrift smiled faintly. Nobody knew if she was referring to Tao Lord Extreme Fire or Su Zimo. Unknowingly, Tao Lord Extreme Fire had already taken control of the entire situation. At that moment, only Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the other two could ensure that their auras did not dissipate despite Tao Lord Extreme Fire's powerful aura. The entire time, Tao Lord Immortal Sword had a restrained sharpness that was kept to himself. Tao Lord Cloud Rain waved his folding fan gently as mist filled the air. The surroundings of Fairy Snowdrift were cold as ice. For everyone else such as Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace, their auras were completely suppressed. Clang, clang, clang. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's fingers tapped on the metal table slowly, letting out metallic sounds in a rhythmic manner. After each strike, the sharpness of his body would increase by a fraction. After a few knocks, the sharpness of Tao Lord Immortal Sword surged into the skies and sliced Tao Lord Extreme Fire's aura into two. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly, "Extreme Fire, it's important to know your limits. If you want to protect this lad, don't drag the entire 100 Refinement Sect down with you." Why? You want to attack in 100 Refinement Sect too? Tao Lord Extreme Fire glared with killing intent. It's not just meal. Tao Lord Immortal Sword stood up slowly like an unsheathed sword and said coldly, "All of us Dharma characteristic Tao Lords of the Immortal Sects are here for him. Are you going to hand him over?" Patron Extreme Fire, 100 Refinement Sect will be at odds with Sword Sect, Chaos Essence Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace and our two Buddhist sects because of a fiend demon. You have to consider this carefully, Monk Kong Wan of Formless Monastery persuaded. Extreme Fire. Tao Lord Cloud Rain stood out as well and said with a faint smile, "If you want to fight against the situation, you'll only bring destruction." Extreme Fire, hand him over. Hand him over. Tao Lord Fire Cloud, Tao Lord Breaking Skies and Tao Lord Cloud Sun stood forward one after another. The 4 immortal sects and 2 monasteries were exerting pressure at the same time. No faction in Tianhuang mainland could withstand such pressure, let alone the 4 unorthodox groups. Pass the order. Tao Lord Extreme Fire stood up as well and said expressionlessly, "Kill anyone who dares to attack in 100 Refinement Sect." How dare you? Tao Lord Fire Cloud's gaze turned cold as he grit his teeth. 100 Refinement Sect has already declined. If we die here, 100 Refinement Sect won't be able to shoulder the responsibility. Try moving and see if I dare to kill you. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's gaze was searing and the flames in his eyes seemed to be burning. The atmosphere was tense and both parties were on the verge of fighting. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others did not dare to act rashly either. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's methods and spirit were stronger than they had imagined. Even the 4 immortal sects and 2 Buddhist monasteries could not suppress him. They were worried that if they attacked, Tao Lord Extreme Fire would truly disregard everything and kill them. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was wary as well. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others were different from Tao Lord Red Tiger. Tao Lord Red Tiger was from Tyrant Emperor Mountain, one of the upper sects. It was alright to kill him since he dared to start a fight in 100 Refinement Sect. However, the people before him were all extremely influential. If he were to kill all of them here, 100 Refinement Sect would be in deep trouble. Right then, the voice of 100 Refinement Sect disciple sounded from outside. "Sect Master, Tao Lord Ferocious Spirit is here." The Tao Lords present were shocked when they heard that name. He was an itinerant cultivator who traveled alone. However, his combat strength was extremely terrifying. He was ranked 10th on the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. He's still alive. Tao Lord Cloud Rain frowned. "Ha ha ha, Extreme Fire, I heard that you're still alive so I'm here to see you." A tall and slender cultivator walked in. His long hair draped over his shoulders and he was slovenly as he laughed with a lazy expression. "Sect Master, Tao Lord Essence Dragon is here to pay his respects." "Sect Master, Tao Lord Grey Flame is here to pay his respects." "Sect Master, Tao Lord Divine Moon of Soaring Feather Sect is here to pay his respects." Chapter 977, Battle. Chapter 977, Battle. Soaring Feather Sect, one of the 9 immortal sects. Tao Lord Divine Moon was also a Tao Lord from thousands of years ago and became famous early on. Extreme Fire, how have you been? He stepped into the hall and cupped his hands towards Tao Lord Extreme Fire with a smile. At this point, Tao Lords from the 6 immortal sects of the Middle Continent were all present. Initially, Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others could have ignored the Dharma characteristic Tao Lords who entered earlier on. Now that even Tao Lord Divine Moon of Soaring Feather Sect had come to congratulate Extreme Fire, everyone had to re-evaluate 100 Refinement Sect status in the cultivation world. Or rather, they had to re-evaluate Tao Lord Extreme Fire's status. Many Tao Lords arrived to extend their congratulations. Everyone from 100 Refinement Sect felt invigorated. Throughout the entire cultivation world, at least half of the weapons came from 100 Refinement Sect. Of the remaining half, 20% came from the foundation of the various major sects themselves. Another 20% came from ruins, cave abodes, secret grounds and inheritance grounds. The remaining 10% were the other weapon refinement sections. As the #1 weapon refinement grandmaster of 100 Refinement Sect, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's status and influence in the cultivation world could be imagined. There were very few Mahayana experts among the 4 unorthodox groups. That was because every cultivator had a limited amount of mental energy. If they were successful in other aspects such as weapon refinement, their path of cultivation will definitely be delayed. In the history of 100 Refinement Sect, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was one of the few people who had reached the peak of weapon refinement and cultivation. He was also a monster incarnate that countless seniors of sects had high hopes for and were certain that he could step into the Mahayana realm. That was also the reason why the entire 100 Refinement Sect was mobilized for Tao Lord Extreme Fire's return. Even conjoint body mighty figures were willing to serve him. Come, take a seat. A smile finally appeared on Tao Lord Extreme Fire's face when he saw his old friends coming to congratulate him. The sight of Dharma characteristic Tao Lord congratulating him one after another was shocking. Even Tao Lord Immortal Sword would not be able to produce such an effect. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others' expressions darkened. With this, it was even more unrealistic for them to attack. At the very least, given their status, it was almost impossible for them to get Su Zimo out of Tao Lord Extreme Fire's hands. Right then, 100 Refinement Sect cultivator strode in with a bewildered expression. After hesitating for a moment he said, "The Asura of the Fiend Sects is waiting outside." Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Tao Lord Extreme Fire frowned at the same time. The two of them exchanged glances without batting an eyelid. Neither of them knew why the Asura of the Fiend Sects was here. What's the Asura doing here? Tao Lord Cloud Rain frowned. As someone of the Fiend Sects, he had a better understanding of the situation. This Asura was the most terrifying monster incarnate of the Fiend Sects in recent years. He was bloodthirsty, eccentric and had no qualms about his actions. It was said that he had just entered Dharma characteristic realm a few decades ago. On Tao Lord Immortal Sword's side, apart from Tao Lord Cloud Rain who was from the Fiend Sects, the other Tao Lords did not have much interaction with this generation's Asura. As for Tao Lord Extreme Fire, he was an expert from 5,000 years ago and did not know the Asura at all. Su Zimo was the only one whose heart skipped a beat as a glint flickered through his eyes. The Asura. Could it be Yen Beichen? If it was Yen Beichen, he might be here to help him. Asura sect was located in the Middle Continent, and it was only logical for the Asura to know about the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Su Zimo was about to send a voice transmission when Tao Lord Extreme Fire said slowly, "Invite him in." In Tao Lord Extreme Fire's mind, he could deal with anyone no matter whose side they were on. Before long, a black-robed man walked in with a cold expression. His face was sharp as a knife and his features were defined. In his hands was a long saber filled with blood chi. There were streaks of blood on the blade that resembled blood vessels that were surging with fresh blood as a blood stench filled the air. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. It was indeed Asura Yen Beichen. He was about to speak when Yen Beichen's gaze swept past his eyes casually. It was an unfamiliar gaze that did not linger at all, as though the two of them had never seen one another before. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he did not take the initiative to greet him. Even though he was puzzled, he knew that Yen Beichen must have his reasons for doing so. Asura, what are you doing here?
Tao Lord Cloud Rain asked with a frown.
If you can come, why can't I?
Yen Beichen swept his gaze and asked indifferently. Tao Lord Cloud Rain's expression darkened as he harumphed and did not continue asking.
All visitors are guests. Take a seat.
Tao Lord Extreme Fire waved his hand and said.
100 Refinement Sect cultivator moved a chair in a fearful manner and placed it in front of Yen Beichen.
With a frightened expression, he turned to leave hurriedly.
Yen Beichen did not thank the cultivator either and sat down just like that. The blood-colored saber in his hands was placed horizontally across his knees.
His eyes were half opened and he looked as though he was asleep. No one knew his intentions. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's gaze flickered for a moment before he suddenly said, Extreme Fire, now that things have come to this, there would only be an internecine outcome if we fight.
I have a suggestion. Oh. Tao Lord Extreme Fire raised his brow. Neither of us had a good time the previous time we fought. Why don't we take this opportunity to fight properly?
Tao Lord Immortal Sword challenged. Through his sentence, he was reminding Tao Lord Extreme Fire. After the battle at Thousand Demon Valley, he already knew that the ones who snatched the heaven-slaying sword art were them. Tao Lord Immortal Sword knew that the heaven-slaying sword art was with Su Zimo and would definitely not return empty-handed. However, this was 100 Refinement Sect and he might not be able to gain an advantage if both parties were to engage in a chaotic battle. But, he was absolutely confident in his combat strength. If he could use this battle to suppress Tao Lord Extreme Fire, he could use Tao Lord Extreme Fire in exchange for Su Zimo.
You want to fight me?
Tao Lord Extreme Fire laughed as flames burned in his eyes. Tao Lord Immortal Sword smiled and mocked. Why?
The number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago is frightened? Su Zimo was shocked to hear this. It was only now that he truly realized the status of Tao Lord Extreme Fire in the cultivation world 5,000 years ago.
The fact that he was the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic alongside his identity as a weapon refinement grandmaster meant that he was an influence that even conjoint body mighty figures could not match.
I think that will work.
Tao Lord Cloud Rain clapped his hands. One of them was the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago, and the other is the current number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking.
What a rare sight.
Why not have a fight for all of us to broaden our horizons? Grandmaster, there's no need for us to take this on.
That's right. You've only just reconstructed your body, and you're definitely not familiar with the control and perception of this body. There's no need for you to take the risk.
Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the others hurriedly sent voice transmissions.
Most importantly, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was extremely famous 5,000 years ago and that was him at his peak.
However, 5,000 years had passed and for Dharma characteristic Tao Lords with 10,000 years of lifespan, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was already in his later stages and was definitely not a match for Tao Lord Immortal Sword who was at his peak. Tao Lord Extreme Fire thought nothing of it and stood up slowly with a surging battle intent.
Very good. I haven't fought for 5,000 years and was just craving for an opponent. You came at the right time.
Battle! Tao Lord Extreme Fire hollered and Dharmic powers surged in his body as he conjured a scarlet spear in reverse. It was almost transparent and scorching as though it had been burned for 7 days and nights.
Chapter 978. Supreme Dharma Characteristic. Chapter 978. Supreme Dharma Characteristic. Swoosh.
Tao Lord Extreme Fire flipped his hand and a red light flashed. Instantly, the fire spear arrived before Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the surrounding air was ignited.
Many Tao Lords retreated.
If they were too close to a battle of this level, they would be drawn into it. Clang! There was no way to tell what Tao Lord Immortal Sword was doing. However, a chilling long sword with 6 Dharmic patterns etched on it appeared in his hands. It was a connate Tao Lord Dharmic weapon. Although the fire spear was fast, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's sword technique was even faster. After drawing his sword, he slashed. Buzz! The sword struck the tip of the spear and sliced through the scarlet body of the spear, producing an ear-piercing sound as it cut the latter into pieces. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had already witnessed Tao Lord Immortal Sword's methods. However, that was only a clone of Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Now that he was watching at a close distance, Su Zimo truly felt the terror of the number 1 on the Dharma characteristic ranking. The two of them merely exchanged a single move and the Dharmic powers in the entire hall seemed to have been sucked dry, causing the hall to tremble. Swash! Tao Lord Immortal Sword destroyed Tao Lord Extreme Fire's Fire Spear with a single slash and did not pause at all. In a flash, he transformed into a sword beam and arrived in front of Tao Lord Extreme Fire instantly. He knew that Dharma characteristic Tao Lords were definitely not his match in melee combat. Therefore, he had shortened the distance at the first moment, wanting to suppress Tao Lord Extreme Fire with his Supreme Sword Tao. Boom! Tao Lord Extreme Fire's expression was unchanged as he touched his glabella gently with his finger. A scarlet tripod flew out and landed in front of him, blocking the incoming sword. That gigantic tripod was also a connate Tao Lord Dharmic weapon. The moment the two of them exchanged blows, they had already summoned their destiny Dharmic weapons. Swash! Tao Lord Immortal Sword flashed again and circled around the scarlet tripod, arriving behind Tao Lord Extreme Fire. His movement technique was way too fast. Even some Dharma characteristic Tao Lords present could not see it clearly, let alone nascent souls and void reversions. Is this sword Sect's sword escape technique? It truly lives up to its reputation. Tao Lord Immortal Sword has killed many strong foes in the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking with this sword escape technique. No one in the same realm can match that movement technique. None of the Dharma characteristic Tao Lords present were nobodies and each of them had their own interpretation of this battle. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's judgment was accurate. He wielded a 3-foot green sword and relied on his sword escape technique to move nimbly. As for Tao Lord Extreme Fire's destiny Dharmic weapon, it was a scarlet tripod. Although it was strong, it was not flexible enough. Tao Lord Extreme Fire did not even turn around as he conjured hand seals with both hands and hollered softly, "Disperse!" Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Instantly, 3 scarlet flames appeared beside Tao Lord Extreme Fire and revolved around him. Scarlet Flame Spiral Lamp. Su Zimo, Nan Gongling and the others recognized it immediately. It was a Dharmic art from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra that could be used for both offense and defense. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's sword was struck by a ball of flames the moment it arrived behind Tao Lord Extreme Fire. Instantly, flames burst forth from his sword and its temperature rose rapidly. Extinguish! He hollered and sword chi burst forth from his body, tearing through the void with a power that seemed as though it could destroy all life. Lifeless Sword Art. Sword cultivators specialized in killing. For Tao Lord Immortal Sword, killing techniques were even pushed to their limits. Tao Lord Extreme Fire had already turned around. His eyes lit up as he conjured hand seals repeatedly. The 3 balls of flames that were initially surrounding him gathered rapidly and formed a gigantic fireball. The Samadhi Tao Fire. Swoosh! The ball of fire smashed towards Tao Lord Immortal Sword viciously. Everywhere it passed, Dharmic powers would be incinerated and space would distort. Lifeless Sword Art, slash. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's blood chi burst forth as his sword buzzed and trembled. He conjured a sword art with one hand and swung his sword with the other, slashing down fiercely at the incoming fireball. Boom! The Samadhi Tao Fire was split into pieces by that slash. Not good. Even the Samadhi Tao Fire can't defend against the sharpness of the Immortal Sword. Tao Lord Scarlet Star's expression changed as he sensed something amiss. Su Zimo focused his gaze. He could clearly see that Tao Lord Extreme Fire's Dharmic arts had not stopped even after the Samadhi Tao Fire was destroyed by Tao Lord Immortal Sword. The shattered flames floated towards Tao Lord Immortal Sword. When it arrived, it gathered together and formed another Samadhi Tao Fire. Many Tao Lords were in an uproar. His fire-taming skills astounded everyone. Su Zimo was momentarily stunned as well, to think that fire techniques could be manipulated to that extent. Even the bystanders were surprised and astonished, let alone Tao Lord Immortal Sword who was directly involved in the situation. He destroyed the Samadhi Tao Fire with a single slash. Before he could retract his sword, a ball of Samadhi Tao Fire had already arrived before him. Although the flame was now much smaller than before, It was still fatal. It was too late for him to retract his sword. Lifeless sword body. Tao Lord Immortal Sword roared and a gigantic phantom shot out from his body, bursting forth with endless sword chi that destroyed the Samadhi Tao fire before him instantly.
Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic.
At this point of the battle, what surprised everyone was the fact that Tao Lord Immortal Sword was disadvantaged and was forced to release his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. 89 feet, it's already infinitely close to 90 feet.
Impressive.
Back when the Immortal Sword obtained number 1 on the Dharma characteristic ranking, this Dharma characteristic was only 85 feet tall.
To think that it has grown to 89 feet.
I reckon there's a high chance he would be able to cultivate a 90 feet tall Dharma characteristic. The outcome of this battle is probably going to depend on the clash of the Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics. As the Tao Lords discussed, the gigantic Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic revealed its sharpness and charged towards Tao Lord Extreme Fire like an unsheathed sword.
Boom!
A loud bang echoed from Tao Lord Extreme Fire's body as well. A gigantic phantom appeared above his head and rose rapidly. It was scarlet red and burned with raging flames, emitting a scorching aura. The expressions of many Tao Lords changed gradually with grim expressions. They suddenly realized that the Dharma characteristic before them seemed to be half a head taller than Tao Lord Immortal Sword's Dharma characteristic. This Dharma characteristic. Heavens 90 feet tall. A supreme Dharma characteristic. 9 was an extreme number and a Dharma characteristic that was 90 feet tall could be considered as a supreme Dharma characteristic no matter which type it was.
Extreme Fire. What a surprise. Seems like you're prepared to teach your juniors a lesson.
Tao Lord Divine Moon of Soaring Feather Sect could not help but exclaim. 90 feet, supreme Dharma characteristic. Tao Lord Cloud Rain's eyes widened in disbelief. 5,000 years ago, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's Dharma characteristic was only 80 feet tall and was similar to his. How did Tao Lord Extreme Fire's Dharma characteristic reach such a terrifying realm after 5,000 years despite losing his physical body? Everyone thought that Tao Lord Extreme Fire's combat strength would definitely decline after he lost his body, and was now in his later years after his peak. However, apart from Su Zimo, no one knew how Tao Lord Extreme Fire managed to survive the past 5,000 years. In the depths of the cold lake, Tao Lord Extreme Fire fought against that unknown poison alone for 5,000 years. It would have been fine if Tao Lord Extreme Fire had died. Now that he was reborn, his essence spirit had long turned incomparably pure under that unimaginable tempering, reaching a terrifying degree. It had even surpassed the Dharma characteristic realm. Even if Tao Lord Immortal Sword did not challenge him, Extreme Fire would have fought him. Extreme Fire wanted to make use of Tao Lord Immortal Sword to take the most important step. Chapter 979. Domineering Suppression. Chapter 979. Domineering Suppression. If he continued cultivating without this battle, it might not be long before Extreme Fire entered the conjoint body realm. However, with a powerful opponent like Tao Lord Immortal Sword, there was a high chance that Tao Lord Extreme Fire would be able to find an opportunity to break through if he won this battle. Tao Lord Extreme Fire wanted to make use of Tao Lord Immortal Sword to accomplish the title of a mighty figure. He had not cultivated for 5,000 years. However, the experience of fighting against that terrifying poison caused his Tao heart and will to reach an indestructible and relentless state. Therefore, after reconstructing his body, his combat strength was much stronger than before. It was precisely because of the 5,000 years of grueling trial that Tao Lord Extreme Fire managed to attain a 90 feet Dharma characteristic. A supreme Dharma characteristic. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's eyes were bloodshot. He was truly enraged and could not be bothered about capturing Tao Lord Extreme Fire alive. He only wanted to win this battle and give it his all. I'll slay your supreme Dharma characteristic today. Tao Lord Immortal Sword roared with a ferocious expression. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's Dharma characteristic was half a head taller than Tao Lord Immortal Sword. However, only a fight would reveal which of the two Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics were stronger. Even if an ordinary Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was of a similar height as a legacy Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic that has been passed down through history, it would definitely be inferior in strength. Legacy Dharma characteristics that are passed down through the foundations of the super sects such as the 18 meters metal body, withered Zen Dharma characteristic, glass Dharmic body and earth malevolent body possess shocking power. Lifeless sword body was one of the legacy Dharma characteristics of Sword Sect. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's eyes burned with flames as he said coldly, "Immortal sword, you've lost. From today onwards, all your glory will be trampled beneath my feet." Today, Tao Lord Extreme Fire wanted to trample on Tao Lord Immortal Sword and take a step further into the conjoint body realm. Everyone thought that Tao Lord Extreme Fire's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic did not have a title. Little did they know that this Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was the Scarlet Flame Dharmic body depicted in the top-tier cultivation technique, Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra. It was the epitome of the Fire Tao. The two Tao Lords stood facing each other in the hall. Their Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics were indomitable. One of them was burning with raging flames while the other was emitting sharp sword chi. Waving their arms, they collided violently. Boom! The clash between the two Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics was frightening. The entire hall was dissected instantly. Clang! 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 The sword chi burst forth and shattered the entire hall into countless holes. As the raging flames burned, the shattered hall melted into a fiery red liquid and fell like a rain of fire. Many Tao Lords retreated in shock. The two Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics collided repeatedly. Their massive figures resembled two divine beings with endless explosions that threatened to destroy the world. That was the power of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. The eyes of Nangong Ling and the others were filled with yearning and envy. If they could wield power as such, they would not have wasted their lifetime cultivating. The fight between the two Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics had reached its climax. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic condensed a gigantic sword with both hands and sliced off one of the arms of the Scarlet Flame Dharma body viciously. The arm that was burning with flames fell like a thick stone pillar and the entire ground shook. To begin with, the Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was a phantom conjured by cultivators. However, that arm seemed corporeal when it was sliced off. The power of that severed arm was enough to kill ordinary Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. Poof! Although the Scarlet Flame Dharmic body only had one arm left, it seized the opportunity to punch through the chest of the lifeless sword body. The clash seemed like an internecine outcome. However, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression was obviously paler. The fist of the Scarlet Flame Dharmic body pierced into the chest of the lifeless sword body and a bedazzling scarlet flame burst forth from the wound. Swoosh! The blazing flames engulfed the lifeless sword body from its chest inside out. If the flames came from the outside, the lifeless sword body could still destroy them with its sharp sword sheath. But now, the flames were coming from within the lifeless sword body. Roar! Tao Lord Immortal Sword let out a low growl and his body trembled. His essence spirit was pushed to its limits and Dharmic powers were injected continuously. The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic let out a painful roar in the raging flames as well. Burn it! Tao Lord Extreme Fire shouted and willed. The Scarlet Flame Dharmic body strode forward and opened its mouth, spitting out a stream of scarlet lava onto the lifeless sword body. Shing! The sword chi on the lifeless sword body was instantly extinguished by the terrifying lava. The lifeless sword body struggled and roared. Its eyes, ears, mouth and nose were filled with raging flames and thick smoke. The flames inside and outside incinerated the lifeless sword body completely. Many Tao Lords were dumbfounded when they saw that, unable to conceal the shock in their eyes. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was defeated. The number 1 of the current Dharma characteristic ranking had lost to the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years. The latter was already past his peak and was in his later years. Although the Scarlet Flame Dharmic body had lost an arm, it was still present and the flames on its body did not diminish. It could still release a terrifying power. As for the lifeless sword body, it was incinerated into nothingness. Boom! The Scarlet Flame Dharmic body with a severed arm roared and strode forward, stomping down fiercely at Tao Lord Immortal Sword with its flaming feet. That stomp carried a supreme might as though it was crushing an ant. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's face was pale as he swallowed a handful of elixirs and forced his essence spirit to activate. He conjured hand seals and conjured a gigantic sword that stabbed towards the incoming foot. Clang!
An ear-piercing sound could be heard when the sword touched the feet.
Tao Lord Immortal Sword shuddered. Right after, under countless gazes, the gigantic sword was burned red and almost transparent.
Snap! The sword broke.
Tao Lord Immortal Sword looked as though he was struck by lightning. Before the feet of the scarlet flame Dharmic body could land on him, he retreated and avoided the calamity.
Even so, he was severely injured and spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. A crushing defeat. Without his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's strength was not enough to fight against a supreme Dharma characteristic. Even with a severed arm, a supreme Dharma characteristic could suppress him. Bang! 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 The scarlet flame Dharmic body strode towards Tao Lord Immortal Sword with torrential flames. Fellow Taoists, save me!
Tao Lord Immortal Sword shouted with a terrified expression.
Tao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Tao Lord Firecloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace and the others were still aggressive earlier on, but now, they were wary and did not dare to attack. They were no match for even the damaged scarlet flame Dharmic body. This battle had stunned many Tao Lords. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was clearly filled with killing intent and was invincible. No one dared to take him on. Tao Lord Cloud Rain's eyes flickered, but he did not attack.
While the other Tao Lords did not make a move out of fear, he had other motives in his mind.
If Tao Lord Extreme Fire were to disregard everything and kill Tao Lord Immortal Sword, 100 Refinement Sect would most likely suffer the wrath of Sword Sect. At that time, many sects and factions might be implicated. For him, he had everything to gain and nothing to lose if a fight between the orthodox sects were to break out. Although he had once helped Tao Lord Immortal Sword fight for the heaven-slaying sword art, that was on account of the benefits the latter promised. Fairy Snowdrift had an indifferent expression. Before she came, she had already said that she would remain neutral and would not interfere in the fight between the two parties. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's heart turned cold when he saw the reactions of the other Tao Lords. Chapter 980, Complete Defeat. Chapter 980, Complete Defeat. Senior Brother. With a shout, Sword Sect's Qin Pianran stood out. Boom! Her figure swayed and a phantom image rushed out of her body. Sword Qi rumbled as she charged towards the scarlet flame Dharmic body without hesitation. Under the circumstances where all other Tao Lords were retreating out of fear, she stood out. Qin Pianran's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was known as the Startling Sword Body and was also one of the legacy Dharma characteristics of Sword Sect. It was 70 feet tall. Under normal circumstances, the Startling Sword Body would definitely be considered as a top-tier Dharma characteristic. However, in front of the 90 feet tall Dharma characteristic, her Dharma characteristic was like a child that charged forward like a moth to a flame. Qin Pianran ignored her own Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. In a flash, she arrived beside Tao Lord Immortal Sword and helped him up before retreating swiftly. Boom! The two Heaven and Earth Dharmic characteristics collided with a deafening bang. Qin Pianran's Startling Sword Body only managed to defend for a moment before it was disintegrated into nothingness by the Scarlet Flame Dharmic body that had lost an arm. With her essence spirit shaken, she grunted and staggered with a pale expression. However, because of that delay, she had already escaped from the battlefield with Tao Lord Immortal Sword and was temporarily out of danger. Thank you, junior sister. Tao Lord Immortal Sword panted heavily and felt a sense of trepidation in his heart. Instinctively, he gripped Qin Pianran's hand tightly, his palms filled with cold sweat. Senior brother, it's all good as long as you're fine. This person is too strong. Let's return to the sect first. Qin Pianran's heart skipped a beat when she was grabbed by Tao Lord Immortal Sword. She blushed and persuaded softly. Tao Lord Immortal Sword gradually calmed down. When he saw the blush on Qin Pianran's face, a thought crossed his mind as he whispered, "Junior sister, I understand your feelings for me. Don't worry, I won't let you down." Yes. Qin Pianran lowered her head and replied in a voice as soft as a mosquito. After all these years, she had been waiting for that statement from her senior brother. At that moment, she felt incomparably blessed as her nose stuffed up while her eyes reddened. Many of the Tao Lords present had calm expressions when they saw that. However, two of them sneered internally. One of them was Tao Lord Cloud Rain. He was an expert in the field of love and was experienced. Naturally, he could tell that Tao Lord Immortal Sword was merely patronizing Qin Pian Ran. The other was Fairy Snowdrift. That was because before this, Tao Lord Immortal Sword had once expressed his love for her, but she merely rejected him. The scarlet flame Dharmic body stood in the middle of the battlefield with its scarlet-red hair dancing in the wind. Flames raged on its body and it did not continue its pursuit. Tao Lord Extreme Fire looked at Tao Lord Immortal Sword, who had fled far away, with a mocking look in his eyes as he declared, "The Dharma characteristic ranking this time round is truly lousy. The number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking is nothing much." Tao Lord Immortal Sword grit his teeth and veins popped up on his forehead with an indignant expression. He had lost all face in front of everyone with that crushing defeat. Before long, this crushing defeat would spread through the entire Middle Continent and the cultivation world. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's heart was filled with endless hatred and anger. His gaze shifted between Tao Lord Extreme Fire and Su Zimo. The humiliation today was a gift from Tao Lord Extreme Fire, and Su Zimo could not escape responsibility as well. If he had obtained the heaven-slaying sword art back in Thousand Demon Valley and cultivated it, the outcome of today's battle would have been the complete opposite. Tao Lord Extreme Fire waved his hand and said coldly, "Scram. Remember, don't come to 100 Refinement Sect to try and boss us around in the future. This is just a lesson for you." That old thing. Tao Lord Cloud Rain cursed internally. He thought that Tao Lord Extreme Fire would go on a killing spree in his rage and incur the hatred of the immortal sections. To think that Tao Lord Extreme Fire would stop in time. That was Tao Lord Extreme Fire. He had grasped the situation perfectly. Even though there were no major immortal sects who were hostile towards him, he had also achieved his goal of establishing his dominance and intimidation. Not only would they have to retreat today, if anybody within the cultivation world wanted to lay their hands on Su Zimo in the future, they would have to deliberate as well. There would be no repeat of today's situation where people could just barge into 100 Refinement Sect asking for someone. Extreme Fire, I'll definitely take revenge for today's humiliation. Tao Lord Immortal Sword clenched his fists and spoke through gritted teeth. "You don't have a chance anymore." Tao Lord Extreme Fire said indifferently, "It's all thanks to you that I was able to receive the opportunity to break through so quickly." Many Tao Lords were alarmed. Break through? If he broke through to the Dharma characteristic realm, wouldn't he be at the conjoint body realm? Tao Lord Immortal Sword could tell what Tao Lord Extreme Fire was implying as well. His blood chi attacked his heart and he spat out another mouthful of blood with a dispirited expression. It was a complete defeat. Tao Lord Extreme Fire did not take him seriously at all for this battle. He was merely used as a stepping stone and for Tao Lord Extreme Fire to exert his dominance. "Senior brother, let's go." When she saw Tao Lord Immortal Sword in such a state, Qin Pian Ran felt a sense of pity and persuaded gently, "Senior brother, you're a titular disciple of the sect and your talent is definitely not inferior to anyone else's. Go back and continue cultivating. You'll definitely make a comeback." For Tao Lord Immortal Sword, words such as titular disciple and talent were extremely piercing right now. In fact, he even felt like Qin Pian Ran was mocking him. "Humph." Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression was cold as he flung Qin Pian Ran's arm away fiercely, completely forgetting that the woman beside him had just saved his life. Qin Pian Ran sighed softly and was not angry. In her opinion, anyone would lose their composure after receiving such a blow. She believed that her senior brother was not intentionally targeting her. Fellow Taoists who are here to extend their congratulations can stay as guests at 100 Refinement Sect. Tao Lord Extreme Fire surveyed his surroundings and said slowly, "As for those with evil intentions, please return. Men, send the guests off." Many Tao Lords could sense that Tao Lord Extreme Fire's aura was rising continuously. It was at a critical point. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was about to break through to the conjoint body realm. "This is a rare opportunity. I'll be thick-skinned and stay behind to observe." Tao Lord Divine Moon smiled faintly. "Not bad indeed. We were just here to extend our congratulations. To think that we would encounter such an opportunity." Another Dharma characteristic Tao Lord clapped and laughed. Not everyone would get the chance to witness a breakthrough to the conjoint body realm.
It was an extremely valuable experience for all the Dao Lords present. As for Dao Lord Immortal Sword and the others, they were naturally too embarrassed to stay and left with darkened expressions. "If you allow it, I would like to stay and observe as well," Fairy Snowdrift said with cupped fists.
"Sure."
Dao Lord Extreme Fire nodded. Fairy Snowdrift had been neutral the entire time and Dao Lord Extreme Fire would not target her.
"Hee, Extreme Fire, see you in the future."
Dao Lord Cloud Rain knew his place and cupped his fists before turning to leave.
Su Zimo looked at Yen Beichen.
Although no one knew the purpose of Yen Beichen's trip, if he wanted to stay, Su Zimo would definitely speak up for him and Dao Lord Extreme Fire would not refuse either. However, Yen Beichen stood up and turned to leave expressionlessly. He had not said anything the entire time.
The remaining Dao Lords frowned in confusion.
Chapter 981, Heartless Saber. Chapter 981, Heartless Saber.
What did the Asura come here for? He came to visit 100 Refinement Sect and left just like that? I'm not sure. That person has always acted without reservations. Who knows what he's thinking?
He's probably here for Su Zimo as well. However, he probably knew that he was not a match when Dao Lord Extreme Fire displayed his strength and decided to flee.
Many Dao Lords looked at Yen Beichen's back view and discussed softly. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly.
He was probably the only one who knew that Yen Beichen had an ulterior motive for coming here. Furthermore, it was most likely for him. "Everyone, please proceed to the inner hall." Dao Lord Extreme Fire nodded at Su Zimo and turned to head within 100 Refinement Sect. Dao Lord Extreme Fire was about to break through to the conjoint body realm and this was an important matter. Su Zimo did not disturb him for Yen Beichen's matter either. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo headed out of 100 Refinement Sect alone.
"Uncle Master, where are you going?"
Just as Dao Lord Scarlet Star was about to leave, he bumped into Su Zimo and asked casually. "I'm just heading out for a walk," Su Zimo replied ambiguously. Dao Lord Scarlet Star reminded, "Uncle Master, be careful. Don't leave 100 Refinement Sect. Dao Lord Immortal Sword and the others shouldn't have gone far." With that said, Dao Lord Scarlet Star left hurriedly to inform the elders of the sect. Dao Lord Extreme Fire was about to break through from the Dharma characteristic realm and all the conjoint body elders of 100 Refinement Sect had to appear to protect him. Nothing must happen during this process. At that moment, everyone's attention was on Dao Lord Extreme Fire and no one noticed Su Zimo's departure. Su Zimo headed forward and sped outside 100 Refinement Sect. Passing through the entrance of 100 Refinement Sect, Su Zimo arrived before the gatekeeper boy and asked, "Where did those Dharma characteristic Dao Lords go?"
"Over there." The gatekeeper boy pointed.
Su Zimo nodded and sprinted in the direction the boy pointed without hesitation. He was not afraid even if he encountered Dao Lord Immortal Sword and the others. Although he was no match for them in terms of combat strength, he could rely on his many trump cards such as Blood Escape to flee. Before long, Su Zimo sensed something. Lowering his body, his entire body was almost stuck to the ground. His limbs moved at the same time and his body slithered forward like a gigantic python without a sound. Su Zimo came to a dense patch of grass before coming to a stop. He squinted his eyes and listened intently. There were a few figures standing in midair up ahead. Sword Sect's Dao Lord Immortal Sword and Qin Pian ran. There was also Dao Lord Cloud Rain, Heavenly Dipper Sect's Dao Lord Breaking Skies, Zephyr Thunder Palace's Dao Lord Fire Cloud, Chaos Essence Sect's Dao Lord Cloud Sun, Formless Monastery's Monk Kong Wen and Wisdom Monastery's Monk Liao Ming. There was also Dao Lord Heaven Sea of one of the upper sects, Five Elements Sect. The 9 Dao Lords stood together. Opposite them stood another figure in black robes with a cold expression and a blood-red saber on his shoulder. The Asura, Yen Beichen. "Asura, why are you following us?" Dao Lord Cloud Rain frowned slightly and asked with a hint of impatience. The Asura had an eccentric personality and was bloodthirsty. Even those of the Fiend sects were unwilling to interact with him and wanted nothing more than to avoid him. Yen Beichen replied indifferently, "Since my Dao title is the Asura, I'm naturally here to kill." Dao Lord Cloud Rain asked, "Who?"
"All of you." Yen Beichen said 3 words and the entire place went silent.
Fu fu. Ha ha.
Immediately after, Tao Lord Breaking Skies, Tao Lord Firecloud and the others laughed mockingly. Are you joking with us? Tao Lord Cloud Son of Chaos Essence Sect sneered. Among them, there were either late-stage or perfected Dharma characteristic cultivators. Furthermore, there were existences like Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Although the Asura was extremely famous, he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. Everyone truly did not take him seriously.
If not for the fact that Tao Lord Cloud Rain was present, they would have been able to kill this Asura with the excuse of slaying evil fiends.
However, among the 9 Tao Lords, there were a few who did not laugh. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was one of them.
He knew that the Asura was never one to joke.
If the Asura wanted to kill someone, he would definitely do it.
Tao Lord Immortal Sword frowned and looked at the Asura with a wary gaze. If he was in his peak condition, he could naturally suppress the Asura with ease. But now that he was severely injured and his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was destroyed, he could not reconjure it within a short period of time.
If he were to truly fight against the Asura, the outcome would be unpredictable. Thankfully, there were 9 people on their side and there should be no danger.
Tao Lord Heaven Sea of 5 Elements Sect knew that he was the weakest among them and did not have the right to mock the Asura. He coughed gently and asked, "Fellow Taoist, we have no feud with you.
Why do you want to kill us?"
Asuras don't need a reason to kill. Yen Beichen's eyes shone with a murderous intent. Without any warning, his shoulders moved and the blood-colored saber seemed to have a life of its own as it jumped up.
The blood vessels on the saber expanded and blood chi filled the air. Swash! Blood flashed. It was too fast. Tao Lord Heaven Sea froze. The next moment, his head flew into the air, spraying blood everywhere. In mid-air, the headless corpse fell. His essence spirit had long been minced by the sharp saber chi and did not even have the chance to escape. Tao Lord Heaven Sea was dead. Even till his death, he did not understand why he died.
He did not expect the Asura to be so decisive and not give him any chance to react. When Su Zimo, who was sprawled in the grass, saw that, his heart skipped a beat and a look of realization flashed through his eyes.
He finally understood why the Asura was here. The Asura was here to kill. The Asura was here to kill for him. Su Zimo was right. The news of the 1,000 Crane Tea Party spread throughout the Middle Continent and Yen Beichen naturally heard it as well. Furthermore, Yen Beichen knew that Sword Sect, Chaos Essence Sect and the other major immortal sects would definitely not let things go and would definitely take action. Therefore, even though he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm, he still rushed over fearlessly after hearing that many Tao Lords wanted to cause trouble for Su Zimo. It was just like in the past. Back when Yen Beichen had just advanced to the Void Reversion realm and heard that Ethereal Peak was in trouble, he crossed an entire region and traveled day and night for a year before resolving Ethereal Peak's crisis almost single-handedly.
Everyone thought that the Asura was heartless and disregarded his kin.
However, Su Zimo knew that although the Asura achieved his Tao through killing, the blood that flowed through his bones was filled with boiling passion.
What was heartless was the Asura saber in his hands.
Although Tao Lord Extreme Fire was powerful, he still had reservations and did not dare to kill Tao Lord Immortal Sword for real. Therefore, he had to stop in time once he attained his goal of establishing dominance and intimidation. After all, Tao Lord Extreme Fire still had to take 100 Refinement Sect into consideration.
However, Yen Beichen had nothing to worry about.
That was because he was an Asura whose Tao was proven by killing. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was merely teaching Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others a lesson. As for Asura Yen Beichen, he had no intention of letting the 9 of them return alive. The Tao Lords were shocked and retreated. Apart from Tao Lord Cloud Rain, no one expected the Asura to really dare to make a move against 9 of them. Less than that, none of them expected the Asura's methods to be this terrifying. Tao Lord Heaven Sea did not even have a chance to react before he was slain by a single saber strike. Chapter 982, White Bones Purgatory. Chapter 982, White Bones Purgatory.
Asura!
Heavenly Dipper Sect's Tao Lord Breaking Skies glared at him and shouted, We didn't attack you because of Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Don't push your luck. Cut the crap. I'll kill Cloud Rain as well.
Yen Beichen sneered coldly and slashed forward with his blood-colored saber. Blood chi spread and a gigantic purgatory appeared before everyone, enveloping the remaining 8 Tao Lords. Purgatory Saber Intent. At this stage of his Saber Intent cultivation where he could materialize Dharmic powers, he could already fight against top-tier Dharmic arts. Although Yen Beichen had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm, his Saber Intent was already at its peak. Instantly, the entire battlefield was filled with a sinister aura and fiend shadows. Blood flowed like rivers and corpses were strewn all over the place as wails of ghosts could be heard. Heavenly Dipper Fist. Tao Lord Breaking Skies shouted and his blood chi surged as he channeled his Dharmic powers to strike the surrounding purgatory viciously. Firmament. Tao Lord Cloud Son of Chaos Essence Sect condensed a top-grade Dharmic art in an attempt to break through the purgatory and connect to the world. Amitba. Formless Monastery's Monk Kong when placed his palms together and formed hand seals, creating a formless Dharmic seal that smashed towards the surrounding purgatory. The Dharma characteristic Tao Lords present were all paragons of the various immortal sects and Buddhist monasteries. Otherwise, they would not have dared to rush to 100 Refinement Sect to demand for Su Zimo. Needless to say, the Tao Lords had a tacit understanding and attacked at the same time, prepared to shatter the purgatory. In the eyes of many Tao Lords, even though the Asura was a titular disciple, he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm at the end of the day and it was impossible for him to fight against 8 of them alone. However, everyone overlooked something. Among them, there were only 2 titular disciples. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was severely injured and was supported by Qin Pian Ran. Neither of them attacked. As for Tao Lord Cloud Rain, he frowned and conjured a Dharmic art in his hands. He merely conjured a mist around him to defend against the Purgatory Saber Intent, and did not take the initiative to attack. Among everyone present, Tao Lord Cloud Rain was the one who understood the Asura the most. If he attacked with his full strength, he had a 60% chance of suppressing the Asura. Although both of them were titular disciples and his cultivation realm was a level higher, his cultivation techniques and secret skills were not lethal enough against the Asura. The Asura was emotionless and sought the Tao through killing. His 7 emotions threads and 6 desires palm strike had minimal effects on the Asura. Furthermore, the Asura was bloodthirsty and disregarded even kinship. He would be wary about a fight to the death with the Asura as well. Furthermore, both of them were titular disciples of the Fiend sections. There was no need for them to fight the moment they met. At that thought, Tao Lord Cloud Rain merely conjured a Dharmic art to defend passively. Apart from the 3 of them, there were only 5 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords in the Purgatory that retaliated. White Bones! Yen Beichen shouted softly and waved his saber. The saber chi surged in the Purgatory. Splash! The corpses that were initially lying motionlessly in the blood river rose one after another as though they had sensed a strange power. One after another, they were densely packed. Those skeletons were all paragons who died under Yen Beichen's hands when they were alive and not many of them were nobodies. Bang! 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 The counterattacks of Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others were blocked by the skeletons. They could not shake the purgatory. Instead, the amount of blood in the purgatory was increasing and it was getting thicker. By now, it had already passed everyone's ankles and a sinister wind blew with a stench. The skeletons could not defend against the Dharmic arts and weapons of Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others and were sent flying in retreat continuously. However, as long as they were not smashed into pieces, even if they lost their arms or heads, the skeletons could still stand up and continue charging towards the 5 Tao Lords. Normally, Buddhist Dharmic arts were the most effective against Dharmic arts of Fiend sections. However, Monk Kong Wen and Monk Liao Ming's Dharmic arts could not suppress the Asura at all. Water could counter fire, but fire could also burn water into nothingness. Sanskrit echoed endlessly with a Buddhist glow. However, the sounds of ghosts wailing and wolves howling were even louder in the purgatory as blood chi surged into the skies, suppressing the Buddhist light fiercely. Not only were the 5 Tao Lords unable to break through the purgatory, they were in a stalemate. At the sight of that, Qin Pian Ran asked softly with a grim expression, "Senior brother, are you still all right?" Tao Lord Immortal Sword was silent as he looked at Tao Lord Cloud Rain silently. Qin Pianran naturally noticed Dao Lord Cloud Rain's actions as well and whispered, Dao Lord Cloud Rain is someone of the fiend sects after all and has no intention of attacking. Let's join forces and kill this fiend together with fellow Taoists from the immortal sects. When she saw that Dao Lord Cloud Rain did not take the initiative to attack, Qin Pianran's intention was to join forces with Dao Lord Breaking Skies and the others to fight the Asura. As for Dao Lord Immortal Sword, his thoughts were on how to escape. Right then something weird happened. Yen Beichen's glabella shone and released a shuddering spirit consciousness fluctuation. A blood-colored saber condensed from spirit consciousness appeared and slashed towards Monk Liao Ming. It was an essence spirit secret skill.
Asura you!
Monk Liao Ming was alarmed. Before he could say anything, he hurriedly conjured his essence spirit secret skill in an attempt to defend against the blood saber.
Boom!
The two spirit consciousnesses collided. After a brief pause, Monk Liao Ming's spirit consciousness was sliced into two by the Asura's spirit consciousness blood saber and it followed through with the momentum to enter his head. Monk Liao Ming's body stiffened and his eyes widened. His gaze gradually dimmed as his life force drained rapidly. The spirit consciousness blood saber slashed down on Monk Liao Ming's face but left no wounds in its wake. However, within his consciousness, his essence spirit was already sliced into two by the blood saber and was completely destroyed. This was a fight between essence spirits. The difference of a single move could result in death. Monk Liao Ming did not even have the chance to conjure his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. Dao Lord Breaking Skies and the others were shocked. Cultivators would not use essence spirit secret skills in a fight unless they had no other choice. After all, the danger of a fight between essence spirits was way too great. Most of the time, even if one could kill his opponent with essence spirit secret skills, their essence spirit might be shaken or even injured. It was difficult to recover from injuries to the essence spirit. That would have a huge impact on a cultivator's future cultivation. For example, in the battle between Dao Lord Immortal Sword and Dao Lord Extreme Fire in 100 Refinement Sect earlier on, both parties were truly enraged and released their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. However, they did not use any essence spirit secret skills. They were also leaving a way out for themselves. Dao Lord Breaking Skies and the others had not expected that the Asura would suddenly release an essence spirit secret skill after a brief battle without giving them any way out. The Asura's killing intent was terrifying. Furthermore, they had not expected the Asura's essence spirit secret skill to be so terrifying that it could kill Monk Liao Ming instantly. What a lunatic! Dao Lord Cloud Rain cursed internally. He had initially planned to watch the show by the side due to his immense strength. But now that the Asura had even released his essence spirit secret skill, he was afraid that the spirit consciousness blood saber would turn and slash towards him. Others might not do something as such, but the Asura would definitely do so. Fog surged within Dao Lord Cloud Rain's body as he pushed away the incoming skeletons. Arriving beside the Purgatory, he flipped his palm and struck it. Boom! The Purgatory was penetrated by his palm. With a flash, Dao Lord Cloud Rain sped into the distance. He had already cultivated to this realm and if nothing went wrong, he would definitely be able to step into the conjoint body realm in the future. He truly did not want to provoke that ruthless Asura for no reason. Chapter 983. Asura Dharmic Body. Chapter 983. Asura Dharmic Body. Dao Lord Cloud Rain's escape caused Dao Lord Breaking Skies and the others to panic. Swash! The spirit consciousness blood saber descended once more and slashed towards Dao Lord Cloud Son of Chaos Essence Sect. Fellow Taoists, help me! As Dao Lord Cloud Son cried for help, he released his essence spirit secret skill right away. He's really a lunatic. Dao Lord Breaking Skies cursed. Everyone, let's fight. Dao Lord Fire Cloud roared. Die, fiend! Monk Kongwen suddenly turned dignified and solemn as golden light flashed. The essence spirit secret skills of the three of them burst forth at the same time. God-slaying sword. Qin Pianran hollered softly and touched a glabella with her fingertip. She condensed a spirit consciousness longsword and slashed down fiercely at the spirit consciousness blood saber. Dao Lord Immortal Sword watched coldly at the side without attacking. Many spirit consciousnesses collided in silence. However, under Su Zimo's gaze, the void where their spirit consciousnesses collided distorted and trembled with a shuddering power. The 5 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords shuddered. The impact on Tao Lord Cloud's son was even greater as he grunted. As for the spirit consciousness blood saber, it was shattered by the 5 spirit consciousnesses and Yen Beichen's face turned pale instantly. However, he pursed his lips and remained silent. Su Zimo's heart sank. Looking at Yen Beichen's condition, his essence spirit seemed to have suffered quite a shock as well and was most likely injured. The 5 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords were definitely extraordinary. Although Yen Beichen was a titular disciple, he had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. It was already rare for him to be able to fight against 5 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords without being disadvantaged. Furthermore, he had even killed a Tao Lord's essence spirit before this. Su Zimo did not appear rashly. Given his strength, he would only be a burden if he charged in. He would cause Yen Beichen to be distracted instead. If someone were to summon their heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, they could kill him with a single finger. Just as Su Zimo was worried, Yen Beichen's eyes lit up. Without any rest, he strode forward and attacked once more. Swoosh! Within the Purgatory, the river of blood surged into the skies, creating massive waves that engulfed Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others. The skeletons roared and charged once more. During the Essence Spirit fight earlier on, Tao Lord Cloud Sun's Essence Spirit received the greatest shock. In fact, there was even a scar on it now. Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. Tao Lord Cloud Sun wanted to summon his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic, but he was a step too late. The moment a phantom rushed out of his body, the blood river surged over and the skeletons surrounded him. His Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was shattered before it could even be released. Tao Lord Cloud Sun opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Die! Yen Beichen's cold voice sounded in his ears. Immediately after, a blood beam streaked across his throat and a sharp saber chi burst forth, killing his essence spirit instantly. Tao Lord Cloud Son of Chaos Essence Sect was dead. Bang! 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 With that single delay, Tao Lord Breaking Skies, Tao Lord Fire Cloud and Monk Kongwen had already summoned their Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics and their gigantic figures rose from the ground. Bang! Boom! Boom! Unable to withstand the impact of the 3 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics, the White Bone's Purgatory was shattered and dissipated gradually. The 3 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics were more than 60 feet tall. A Tao Lord that could cultivate a Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic that was 50 feet tall was already considered rather powerful. Any Tao Lord that could cultivate a Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic that was more than 60 feet tall was definitely a paragon. Against ordinary Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, it was enough to suppress them. Unfortunately, they were facing the Asura Yen Beichen. Boom! Yen Beichen's body swayed and a blood-red shadow appeared above his head. Instantly, it rose to a height of 60 feet and was still expanding. 70 feet. 80 feet. 85 feet. The Asura Dharmic body only stopped when it reached a height of 85 feet. Yen Beichen was at early stage Dharma characteristic realm. Even at early stage, he could cultivate a Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic that was 85 feet tall. If he were to cultivate to perfected Dharma characteristic realm, there was a high chance he could cultivate his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic to 89 feet and be on par with Tao Lord Immortal Sword's lifeless sword body. If he encountered great opportunities, it was not impossible for him to attain a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic. Typically, cultivators would be able to form their Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics right upon reaching the Dharma characteristic realm. However, the initial height of the Dharma characteristic would determine its potential in the future. If a cultivator's initial Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was only 10 feet tall and 20 feet tall, even if that cultivator was at perfected Dharma characteristic, his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic would definitely not surpass 50 feet. If that cultivator was at early stage Dharma characteristic realm and could condense a Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic that was 50 feet tall, he might be able to grow it to or break through 60 feet at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Take the legacy Dharma characteristic of Diamond Monastery, the 18 meters metal body, for example. An early stage Dharma characteristic could condense a 60 feet 18 meters metal body.
This meant that once a diamond monastery monk cultivated to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, his metal body could rise to a height of 70 feet. That would already be quite a terrifying height. A 70 feet tall Dharma characteristic was already qualified to fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking.
But now that Yen Beichen had released his 85 feet Asura Dharmic body, Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others were scared out of their wits and no longer had any thoughts of resisting.
Escape. Without hesitation, the three Tao Lords turned and fled, allowing their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics to shield their backs. Kill! Yen Beichen hollered and his blood-red Asura Dharmic body surged with blood chi. It wielded a blood-red saber and charged towards the three Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, as though it had transformed into an Asura itself. Shoo! On the other side, Tao Lord Immortal Sword seized the opportunity to circulate his essence spirit. Dharmic power surged in his body and he vanished, turning into a sword beam that sped into the distance. Sword escape. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Qin Pianran's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics were destroyed by Tao Lord Extreme Fire and could not be formed yet. Realizing that the situation was bad, Tao Lord Immortal Sword chose to flee at the first instant. In fact, he did not even notify Qin Pianran before he left. Trying to flee? Yen Beichen sneered. As his Asura Dharmic body chased after Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the other, his own body moved and slashed forward with his Asura saber. Swash! A gigantic blood-colored saber shadow descended from the skies and streaked across the void, as though it wanted to slice the world into two. Instantly, it caught up to the sword beam in the distance and slashed down viciously. Although Yen Beichen was attacking Tao Lord Breaking Skies and the others, in reality, half of his attention was on Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was someone he definitely had to kill. This man was vengeful. He suffered immense humiliation in 100 Refinement Sect and hated Su Zimo to the core. If he was allowed to leave, there would definitely be trouble in the future. The purpose of Yen Beichen's arrival today was to settle everything once and for all. Senior brother, watch out. Right then, just as the blood-colored saber shadow was about to slash Tao Lord Immortal Sword, a beautiful figure wielded her sword and blocked it. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere as the sword and saber collided. Qin Pianran's body shuddered and she could not hold on to the sword in her hands. It flew out of her hands and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face turned frightfully pale as she fell from midair. She was already severely injured from the single slash of the Asura. The moment she fell from midair, Qin Pianran knew that she would definitely die today and could no longer escape. She tried her best to turn back, wanting to take one last look at Tao Lord Immortal Sword. She would be satisfied and could die without regrets as long as she could take a final look at her senior brother. However, when she turned around, her heart gradually turned cold and sank into the depths. The sword beam was long gone. It did not even pause a split second for her. The person who had just said that he would not let her down did not even turn back to look at her. All she saw was a sword beam disappearing into the horizon. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.